Welcome back to part 17 of What If Naruto Was Told About the Secret to the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Please remember to like and subscribe as it motivates me to upload more in the future, and as always link to the fanfiction is in the description. Chapter 49. The Return Home. Tenten sighed as she manned her father's store. The day was incredibly slow, phenomenally slow. She hadn't had a single customer in the last 2 hours. Days like this were the worst, not only because she was stuck behind a counter all day, but also because she couldn't go on a mission. Guy-sensei and Rock Lee were probably training. Knowing Neji as she did, he was probably training as well. Not her. She was stuck doing jack squat all day. Dang it. She wished someone would at least enter the store so she could have a decent conversation with another human being. As if someone had heard her wish, the bell on the door jingled, and Tenten looked up as someone walked in. Long blonde hair hung down to her waist. Her eyes were dark and contrasted with her pale skin. The dark pants she wore rustled as she moved, making the depiction of clouds on her left pant leg come alive. She wore a dark shirt with purple body armor over it. That armor conformed to her budding 18-year-old figure, and Tenten couldn't stop from eyeing the girl's bust with a bit of envy. White bandages wrapped around her arms and ankles. Fingerless gloves. Ninja sandals. There was a Kumogakure headband on her forehead. Yugito. Tenten greeted enthusiastically. She and Yugito had an odd friendship. Ever since Naruto had went on his training trip, they had been spending more and more time together. Whenever they weren't on missions, they were with each other, having bonded over a shared fondness for the boy who was absent. It was actually Yugito who had been helping Tenten train the most. Smiling as she walked into the store, Yugito greeted her in return. "Tenten, you look bored." Tenten moaned. "I'm extremely bored. Since Guy-sensei and the others decided not to go on a mission today, Dad thought it would be fine if I watched the store for him. I can't even train thanks to that old coot. I guess that's fathers for you. Are you going on a mission?" "Yes. It's an A-ranked mission, so I'll take the usual." "Got it." Yugito Ni was a Jonin of Kumogakure, but she was living in Konoha as a liaison between the two villages. Despite being a liaison, she often went out of the village on missions that the Raikage sent to her via carrier bird. Sometimes she would disappear for as long as a whole month. Tenten remembered one time when that happened, and when Yugito returned, she'd been covered in blood. She supposed that was the life of a Jonin. A lot of people tended to ignore Yugito because of the bloody history between Konoha and Kumo. However, Tenten wasn't one of those people. It wasn't like what happened between their villages was Yugito's fault. She hadn't even been born back then, and it wasn't like they were enemies now. Yesterday's enemy was today's friend. It went something like that. "It's been over 2 years, hasn't it?" Yugito said suddenly as Tenten was ringing her up. It didn't take a genius to figure out what she was talking about. "Yeah," Tenten agreed. "He should be coming home soon. I wonder how strong he's gotten." Knowing Naruto, he's probably gotten a lot stronger. Naruto had left the village over 2 years ago to train with Jiraiya of the Sannin. He had already been incredibly strong back then, having become a Chunin during his first and only Chunin exam. Tenten could only imagine how much stronger he was now. The thought made her blush. "The total comes to 600 ryo. Here you go." Money exchanged hands, and Yugito grabbed the scroll that Tenten had used to store all of her equipment in. She slipped it into the pouch strapped to her left thigh. "Well, I'll see you when I get back," Yugito said, waving as she turned around. "Yeah, see you." Tenten watched Yugito walk toward the store entrance. Before the woman could leave, just as she was placing her hand on the door, Tenten called out to her. "I won't lose to you." Yugito turned her head. "When Naruto comes back, I won't lose to you," Tenten repeated. Yugito cocked her head and smiled. "I won't lose either," she said, and then she was gone. As the door closed behind her, and the room was once more cast into silence, Tenten set her chin on the butt of her hand and sighed. She wondered how Naruto was doing, and if he'd be coming home soon. She was so bored. XOX. Naruto walked alongside Jiraiya through a thicket of trees. The earth and soil thumped underneath his feet, while the snapping of the twigs they stepped on added an extra crunch. They could have taken the road, but there was no fun in that. Their destination. Konoha. Home. "It's been a long time since we've been to Konoha," Naruto said. "That has," Jiraiya agreed. "I wonder how much stronger everyone has gotten." "Who knows?" The sound of their footsteps crunching against branches, twigs, and grass echoed around them. Konoha's familiar trees surrounded them on all sides. From where they walked, Naruto couldn't see the gates of Konoha, but he knew they were coming up on them. "You excited to see your lady friends?" asked Jiraiya. "Definitely." Naruto grinned as he hopped over a root that was sticking out of the ground. "I bet Ten-chan and Yugi-chan have become really strong, and I think I remember old man Raikage saying something about how Yugi was staying in Konoha." "She's a liaison between Kumo and Konoha," Jiraiya informed him. "It's kinda surprising that Tsunade would let someone like that into the village, but I guess it just goes to show you how much the times are changing." "Yeah, you gonna screw 'em." Naruto scowled at his sensei. "Don't be so crass, you damn pervert. You know it's not my policy to have sex unless they want it." Jiraiya's perverted smile, which appeared suddenly and without warning, made Naruto shudder. "I know all about your policy. I remember that time when you and Temari went on a mission and—" "All right, that's enough out of you," Naruto mumbled as the sea of trees slowly parted to reveal a large red gate in front of them. The gate's doors were currently open, though that would change at night when they locked the gate up. As he and Jiraiya stepped through, Naruto got his first good look at the village, Konoha, his home and the place he hadn't seen in over 2 years. Konoha, known as a village but having more in common with a large city, spread out before him, a series of houses and buildings of varying shapes and sizes. Over to the left was the small booth that registered people coming into the village. He recognized the two sitting behind the counter. Kotetsu and Izumo, the so-called Eternal Chunin. However, most of his attention was on the village itself. "It hasn't changed much, has it?" asked Jiraiya. "No, it really hasn't," Naruto agreed. Konoha looked the same now as it had when they left. The buildings, the mostly thatched roofs, and the Hokage Tower standing in the center of it all before the Hokage monument. It all looked just like he remembered. There was only one small difference. "Hey, isn't that?" Deciding to get a better look, Naruto used a sealess Shunshin no Jutsu to transport himself onto the nearest lamp post. Now standing several meters above the ground, Naruto could see the village much better, and so he had a great view of the only change that Konoha looked like it had undergone. That was the addition of Tsunade's face to the Hokage monument. "Huh, Tsunade Oba-san looks surprisingly good up there, doesn't she, Akane?" Naruto received no answer. He sighed. It had been a long time since Kyuubi, who had chosen the name Akane many centuries ago, had spoken with him. In fact, the last time they had spoken was during the mission with Koyuki in the Land of Snow. Ever since that mission ended, Kyuubi had been silent. He had tried going into the mindscape to see her, but he'd been kicked out before he even reached the door to her seal. Naruto had tried several more times to get in. However, since that first time, he hadn't even been able to enter the mindscape. "Naruto!" A familiar voice called out to him. Looking down, Naruto grinned when he saw Sakura standing near the bottom of the pole. Another Shunshin no Jutsu brought him back down to the ground. "It's been a while, hasn't it, Sakura?" said Naruto, grinning. "You've grown a lot since I last saw you." "Wah, oh, do you really think so?" Sakura asked. "Yep." Naruto gave her a thumbs up and grinned. "You've gotten a lot more womanly." Thank you." Naruto studied Sakura a bit more. Her pink hair was still cut short, but her clothing had changed a bit. Her sleeveless top was the same, a reddish-pink shirt that showed off her slender shoulders. However, she had added black gloves, low-heel, knee-high boots, and a short gray apron skirt. The cloth on her headband had also changed from blue to pink. Likewise, she was wearing a medical pouch on her thigh, where before she had just worn a standard ninja pouch. He then looked at her chest. Still pretty flat, though. A tick mark appeared on Sakura's forehead. "What was that? I dare you to say that again," she shouted, swinging her fist. Naruto laughed as he gently redirected her hand, grabbed her wrist, and pulled it toward the ground. Caught off guard, Sakura could do nothing as Naruto got in her face and grinned. "Relax, I didn't mean anything bad by it," he said. "You still look cute." It was interesting to see how red Sakura's face had turned. He and Sakura had never gotten along all that well, mostly because he'd been trying to hit on her and she had literally hit him. Then, after they had both graduated, Naruto dropped his crush for her and began ignoring her except when they had to communicate. That had changed a little during the Chunin exams. He hadn't seen much of her after the exams because he'd been so busy, but it looked like she had matured a bit. He was also amused to know that he could make her blush. That wasn't something he'd been capable of doing before. "Are you going to see Tsunade-sama?" asked Sakura, changing the subject as she looked away. "Probably," Naruto said. "We need to at least let her know that we're back. Knowing Tsunade-hime as I do, she's probably gonna have some plan for you to show off the skills you gained during our training," Jiraiya said. "Oh, Jiraiya-sama," Sakura greeted. "Hello. Hey, there, Sakura. It looks like you've gotten a lot stronger. I can see that Tsunade's training has been good for you." "It has," Sakura agreed. "Hey, it's Naruto." Another familiar, but slightly more mature than he remembered, voice said. It was a kid with spiky hair, a yellow shirt with a blue scarf, and a headband on his forehead. There were two people with him, a girl with orange pigtails and a boy whose nose looked perpetually runny. Naruto recognized them. "Konohamaru, Moegi, Udon," he greeted with a grin. "How are you three doing? I see you've become ninjas since I left." "Hehe, that's right, Naruto," Konohamaru said, swiping his thumb across his nose. "We've become really strong now. You look it." Nodding several times, Naruto said, "I can tell you've become much stronger just by looking at you. You'll be surprised by how strong we've become," Moegi added. "Just look at our new jutsu," Udon said, sniffling. All three performed a hand seal that Naruto recognized, would have been hard-pressed not to recognize. It was for a jutsu he was quite familiar with. He was, after all, the inventor of this particular jutsu. Oroku no Jutsu, Sun. A large burst of smoke exploded around the trio. Sakura coughed several times and waved her hand in front of her face, though that changed as the smoke cleared and she saw what had happened to the three younger ninja. Then her eyes bulged. Wah, wah. All three genin had transformed from children into busty ladies, a long-haired hottie in the center, a smoking orange-haired beauty on the left, and a drop-dead gorgeous girl with short blue hair on the right. Each of them struck a pose that Naruto guessed they thought was seductive. He had to admit that they weren't bad, but "It's no good," Naruto said with a sigh. What? All three of them shouted. "Your appearances are fine," Naruto continued. "But only a pervert like this old lech would fall for something so simple." He hitched a thumb at Jiraiya, who was snorting like a bull as he eyed the three with hearts in his eyes. The Oroku no Jutsu is about more than just transforming into a naked woman. First is the placement of the smoke. You have to place it around you so that it shows enough to tantalize and tease, but isn't enough to show everything. Konohamaru, you're showing too much, while Moegi and Udon aren't showing enough. Next up is your stances. They're very basic. Since there are three of you, it would have been better to get close together. It's more distracting to your opponents if you three get bust to bust. Huh, you think so? Moegi asked as the three of them dispelled their technique. I know so, Naruto said. One time when I was infiltrating a slave trading ring, the girls I had come to rescue distracted the guards by posing together like that. It's a tried and true method. I suppose that means we'll need to work on this some more, Konohamaru muttered. Absolutely not. Sakura suddenly shouted, pointing at them. You three should never perform that jutsu again. What kind of technique is that anyway? It's a legitimate technique, Naruto replied to her scorn with a calm frown. The Oroku no Jutsu is great for distracting enemies. Even non-perverted ninja can be surprised if you use such an audacious and silly technique on them. A second's distraction in battle can mean the difference between life and death. Sakura faltered at Naruto's well-thought-out lecture. He would have smiled as her still pointing hand dropped. She couldn't really deny that his words rang true, especially since Kakashi was their sensei and a well-known reader of smut. Even she had to understand the effectiveness of a jutsu like this. I also have a reverse version of the Oroku no Jutsu that's effective against female ninja, Naruto added. Well, Sakura turned away, her cheeks the same color as her hair. Maybe I should see how effective this technique of yours is, just so I don't get surprised by it. Hiding his grin, Naruto said, maybe later. We have to see Tsunade Oba-san, remember? After saying goodbye to Konohamaru, Moegi, and Udon, Naruto and Jiraiya, with Sakura now in tow, headed to the Hokage Tower. The massive red tower looked the same as it always had. As Naruto entered the Hokage's office with Jiraiya and Sakura, he looked around and realized that almost nothing had changed. His feet thumped lightly against the tiled floor. On the opposite end of the room, behind a desk stacked with papers, sat Tsunade Senju, the leader of the Leaf, the fifth Hokage, and a woman who could destroy buildings with a single punch. Tsunade hadn't changed at all since he'd seen her. Blonde hair tied into 2 ponytails. Brown eyes. A porcelain face framed by several bangs. A green haori sat on her shoulders, underneath which was a gray kimono shirt tied together by a blue obi. Like everything else, Tsunade's massive chest, which practically spilled out of her shirt, was the same as he remembered. Her aide, the dark-haired, brown-eyed Shizune also didn't look like she had changed much. As he, Jiraiya, and Sakura walked up to the desk, Tsunade stared at him and smirked. "You look like you've grown a little stronger. And you haven't aged a day. Impressive for an old hag." Sakura gawked at him. Naruto. What are you saying? Apologized to Tsunade-sama immediately. However, it was too late. Tsunade had risen from her seat and moved around the desk. Her eyes shone with a dangerous gleam. "An old hag, am I?" she asked. She cracked her knuckles. "This old hag can still kick your ass." Just like what had happened with Sakura, Tsunade threw a punch at him, one that was far stronger than his teammates. Despite its strength, however, Naruto dealt with it the same way he had the last one, by gently redirecting it with a nudge. Unlike Sakura, who had allowed herself to be pulled toward him, Tsunade pulled back. Her experience made her more able to adapt to situational shifts in combat. "Not bad, brat," Tsunade said, moving back to her seat, where the shocked Shizune was staring between them with wide eyes. "You used just a bit of wind chakra to push aside my attack. That sort of wind manipulation isn't something just anyone can master. I should have expected you to figure out how my trick worked." Naruto raised his hands behind his head and grinned. "I guess that's a cage for you." "Indeed." Tsunade looked at Jiraiya. "How strong would you say Naruto is?" Without his hybrid mode, Naruto can match most Jonin save for the S-ranked ones like Kakashi and Itachi, Jiraiya answered, rubbing his chin. "And with hybrid mode, he can easily match an S-ranked ninja on his own. I'd say he's even stronger than Kisame Hoshigaki." "Is that so?" Tsunade murmured, placing her forearms on the desk and leaning forward. "In that case, how would you like to take the Jonin exams, Naruto?" While Sakura and Shizune both looked at her aghast, Naruto considered the proposal. He knew of the Jonin exams, but he didn't know what they entailed. The Jonin exams were one of the most well-kept secrets of each respective hidden village. The reason for this was due to how highly valued Jonin were. The Chunin exams was a huge event that brought all of the villages together and was used to advertise their ninja to prospective clients, but that was because nothing a genin knew was worth keeping a secret over. On the other hand, a Chunin with enough skills to take the Jonin exams likely had several village secrets, or knew at least one or more of their village's most powerful ninjutsu. No village was willing to showcase such secrets to the public, lest they risk other villages or missing ninja getting their hands on those secrets. "I certainly don't mind taking the Jonin exams," Naruto said as he sensed the presence of a certain one-eyed Jonin squatting outside the window. "Excellent." Tsunade leaned back and clapped her hands once. "It will take at least a day to prepare the exams. I need to gather the proctors who will administer the test. I'm guessing Kakashi is going to be one of them," said Naruto. "Kakashi?" Tsunade questioned. "Why do you say that?" Before Naruto could state that Kakashi was hanging around outside, the doors to the Hokage's office opened and 2 people walked in. One of them had black hair shaped like a pineapple and a lazy look in his eyes. The other was a gorgeous blonde with a unique hairstyle that consisted of 4 ponytails. "Temari, Shikamaru," Sakura greeted before Naruto could say anything. "Look at what the cat dragged in." As she gestured to him, Shikamaru and Temari turned. While the lazy look in Shikamaru's eyes remained, Temari's expression was telling, though Naruto highly doubted anyone except Tsunade and Jiraiya had noticed the blush on her cheeks. "Naruto." Shikamaru blinked. "Naruto, is that you?" "Who else would I be?" "Iruka-sensei?" asked Naruto. "Huh, wow." Shikamaru stared at him for a long moment before a smile broke out. "I can't believe you're finally back. You've gotten a lot bigger. You look like you've changed quite a bit." "So do you. You don't seem as lazy as you used to," Naruto shot back. Shikamaru sighed. I know. Ever since I became a chunin, I've been swamped with work. It's so troublesome. Naruto smiled before looking at the woman by his side. Temari, it's been a while. Almost a year, Temari agreed. The last time we saw each other was on that mission in the Land of Claws. That's right. Naruto grinned as he recalled that mission. You and I were both after the slave trading ring that had been set up there. Neither of us knew the other was on the mission, and we nearly got into a fight when we thought the other had been hired by the slavers. Temari laughed as she placed her hands on her hips. That's right. And after the mission, she stopped talking, looked around, and suddenly seemed to remember that there were people in there with them. Anyway, it's good to see you again, Naruto. I'm curious to see how strong your wind affinity has grown. I didn't get to see much of it during our last mission together. I'll be sure to make some time so we can compare notes. Naruto winked. You two seem awfully close, Sakura muttered, giving Naruto a glare. Of course, Temari said. Naruto spent the first 6 months of his training in Suna, learning how to use wind chakra. I was the one who trained him, so he and I became pretty close. Tsunade raised an eyebrow and looked at Jiraiya, who merely grinned and gave her a thumbs up, causing her to sigh. Shizune, standing beside her, giggled into her hand. Meanwhile, Shikamaru muttered a soft, troublesome, while Sakura looked like she had just been struck in the face with a dead fish. Since you're in Konoha, I'm assuming that you guys are here to deliver a report regarding the upcoming Chunin exams, Naruto said. That's right. At the mention of the Chunin exams, Shikamaru walked up to Tsunade's desk and handed her a folder. Here is a list of all the applicants from the other villages. While the list hasn't been finalized, there's unlikely to be any changes since most of these villages don't have any more genin worth sending to the exams. Thank you, Shikamaru, Tsunade said as she received the folder and set it on her desk. Well, I'll see y'all later, Naruto. Shikamaru waved at him as he ambled out the door. Temari hung back for a second to speak with Naruto. I'll try to make some time before I leave for us to talk. You can stop by my apartment if you want, Naruto suggested. I might do that. Anyway, catch you later. Naruto waved as Temari left, not noticing the people staring at him until the door had closed and Temari's footsteps receded. Only then did he notice Jiraiya's perverted giggling, Tsunade's raised eyebrow, Shizune's smile, and Sakura's, what the fuck did I just watch? Expression. The only one he couldn't see was Kakashi, who remained hidden outside. I had no idea you and Temari were so close, Tsunade said, glaring at Jiraiya, who stopped giggling long enough to shrug. Don't look at me. I wasn't in charge of his training when we went to Suna. Whatever. Tsunade sighed and rubbed her head. Anyway, let me explain how the Jonin exam works before you head home to unpack. Sure thing, Naruto said, but maybe you should let Kakashi do the explaining, since he's been standing outside this window ever since our meeting started. Naruto, what are you talking about? Asked Sakura. Before Naruto could answer, the window opened and a somewhat gangly figure walked in. Black pants, white tape wrapped around the ankles, blue shinobi sandals. The person before them didn't look particularly imposing in his blue long-sleeved shirt and green flak jacket, but Naruto knew not to underestimate this spiky-haired ninja, whose silver hair was only slightly odder than the way his headband covered his right eye. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura shouted in surprise. Hello, Sakura. Naruto. Kakashi gave them both an eye smile. I see your sensing abilities have become impressive. That's not the only thing that you'll find impressive, Naruto assured. I'm guessing you're going to be one of the proctors for the Jonin exam. That's right, Kakashi admitted. The Jonin exam is a 3-part test that's administered by 3 proctors, Tsunade began. Each test is designed to test something specific: your ability to make analytical decisions based on little information, your abilities in combat, and whether or not you are an appropriate candidate to become Jonin. Due to the nature of the tests, you won't actually know what the tests are until you take them, but all 3 proctors have to give you a pass. If even one Jonin decides that you aren't fit for the job, then you'll fail. Sounds rough. All villages hold their Jonin to a much higher standard than we do our Chunin, Tsunade explained. That's the reason there are so many Chunin and very few Jonin. Even though some Chunin might have Jonin-level abilities, that doesn't mean they're fit to be Jonin, so in order to find out who is truly qualified, we hold a stringent test to make sure that only the best of the best can become our elite. From what Naruto remembered of his lessons with Jiraiya, only about 1 in every 500 ninja become a Jonin. Konoha had around 20,000 shinobi, give or take, but there were only around 100 to 150 were Jonin. Well, this has been a pretty enlightening conversation and it was nice seeing some old faces, Naruto said. But I have a few places I want to hit up before heading home. Do you need me for anything, Oba-san? Not at the moment, no. Tsunade shook her head. All right, then I'll see you all later. Grinning, Naruto headed out of the door, down the hall, and out of the Hokage Tower. He had 2 stops that he would like to make before heading home. One of them was to see a good friend. XOX. Naruto stepped through the door, a soft jingle ringing out. The Higurashi weapon shop looked no different now than it had when he first entered several years ago. Racks lined the walls. Weapons sat on the racks. There were several aisles filled with ninja supplies, shuriken, kunai, ninja wire, they even had storage scrolls. At the back of the shop was a long counter, which sat in front of a door that Naruto knew led to a forge, though he'd never actually seen it. She sat in front of the counter. Her hair was still tied into those 2 buns, which were reminiscent of a mouse. A few strands of hair fell down her face, bringing attention to her eyes, large gems of warm brown. Her face was older. She looked more mature, more grown up. Her outfit had changed. She was sporting a long-sleeved, high-collared white blouse with maroon edges, black fingerless gloves, low-heeled sandals, and a black forehead protector. Her puffy hakama pants sat low. The sides of her hips were exposed, but they had been covered in bandages. She wasn't wearing her ninja pouch, but Naruto assumed she carried everything she needed in a scroll now. That seemed more her style. Ten-chan. Naruto greeted with his usual exuberant wave. Tenten's head snapped up at the sound of his voice. She stared at him for several seconds, eyes blinking as though she couldn't make heads or tails of him. Naruto? She asked, her voice tentative, hesitant. Naruto spread his arms. In the flesh. Naruto. Before Naruto could say anything more, Tenten leapt over her counter and bounded toward him. He had only a second to realize that she wasn't stopping. Then she was on him, and Naruto felt like he'd been hit by a freight train, and then his body was being squeezed as though it was trapped in a vice. Naruto could have sworn his spine was being bent. I can't believe you're back. Tenten said before jerking backwards as though she had been struck by a lightning jutsu. Naruto ignored the way his spine protested the action and grinned. Yep, I'm back. When did you get back? Just now. Still grinning, Naruto placed his hands behind his head and relaxed. I needed to see Oba-san for a bit, but after we finished talking, I came straight here. I'm glad to see you. Tenten's cheeks turned just the tiniest bit red. I missed you. Thanks. I missed you, too. Naruto said with another grin. Say, do you want to go get some Ichirakus with me? I'd like to visit the old man and Ayame-chan. Tenten looked around her store for a second, dithering, but then she looked back at him and grinned. Sure, I'd love to. Just let me close up shop early for the day, and then we can get going. Sounds good. Naruto waited for Tenten as she moved about the store. She was locking up supplies and taking down some of the better ninja weapons, which would probably be stored in the back. He would have asked if she needed help, but Naruto didn't know where any of this stuff went, so he didn't think he'd be much help. He might even make things worse. When Tenten was finished, she locked up the door, and they began making their way toward Ichiraku. While they walked, they talked. How was your training with Jiraiya-sama? Please don't call that pervert, Sama. He doesn't deserve the title. It went well. I learned a lot, and I've grown much stronger. I can tell. What about you, Ten-chan? How have the past 3 years been with Team Guy? Same as always. Guy-sensei and Lee are always going off to train their youthful bodies, and Neji has been spending most of his time learning from Hiyashi Hyuga ever since he became a Jonin. I didn't know Neji's become a Jonin. Naruto gawked. Holy shit. Has anyone else made it to Jonin? No. Just Neji. Shikamaru probably could become a Jonin, but he's too lazy and unmotivated. Yeah, that lazy bum would never do something so troublesome. I know that Shino also took the Jonin exams once about a year ago, but he failed during the final test. I guess these exams really are hard. It wasn't long before the familiar stand came into sight. Ichiraku was a bar-style restaurant built into a two-story building that served as both storage shed and house for the father-daughter pair who owned it. As Naruto lifted the small flaps and entered with Tenten, he took a look around. There were only 2 other customers sitting at the bar. Tyuki Oji-san wasn't present, but Ayame was standing over the boiler where they cooked ramen noodles. Ayame-chan, 2 pork ramen, 1 chicken ramen, and a shrimp ramen for your favorite customer, please. Turning around, Ayame looked over at him. Like Tenten, it took her a moment to realize who he was, but then her face broke into a broad grin. Well, if it isn't my favorite customer, Ayame said. Let me whip up some ramen for you to celebrate your return. Thanks, Ayame-chan. Naruto and Tenten sat down at the bar, and the 2 customers looked at them before going back to their ramen. As they sat there, Naruto began to regale both Tenten and Ayame with stories about his training with Jiraiya, focusing primarily on the missions that he had been on instead of the training itself. Those were much more interesting. And then I shoved a Rasengan into his face. It wasn't the prettiest way to defeat someone. Naruto finished telling them about the time he had broken into a drug smuggling ring. It was one of his more exciting adventures because the smugglers had hired an A-ranked missing ninja to protect them. I'll bet, Tenten muttered as their ramen arrived. She had ordered chicken. That Rasengan of yours is a brutal technique. I've seen you pulverize boulders with it. I don't want to imagine what that can do to a human face. Is that really appropriate dinner conversation? Asked Ayame. She looked more than a little green. It is for a ninja, Naruto and Tenten said at the same time. They looked at each other, grinned, and then began laughing. XOX. Jiraiya stood off to the side in the Hokage's office as 3 Jonin, Kakashi Hatake, Asuma Sarutobi, and Kurenai Yui stood before the desk. Tsunade was sitting behind the desk. By her side as always was Shizune. Being an outsider, of a sort, Jiraiya merely remained against the wall, his arms crossed as he watched the proceedings. I've gathered the 3 of you here to be proctors in administering the Jonin exams to Naruto Uzumaki, Tsunade said. Naruto. Kurenai's eyes widened fractionally, not quite hiding her surprise. I had heard that he'd returned to the village. I guess that explains why Jiraiya-sama is here, Asuma said. Kakashi flipped another page of his book. Nodding her head once, Tsunade said, that's right. Naruto has returned to the village, and while I can't say for certain, I'm positive that he's more than capable of becoming a Jonin. That's why I'm putting this test together for him. Makes sense, Asuma admitted, scratching his head. The kid put on a pretty good show during the Chunin exams 3.5 years ago, and if he's been training with Jiraiya-sama, then he's bound to be a monster. Asuma, Kurenai chided. Mind the way you word things. Sorry, Asuma mumbled, abashed. That is what I want you 3 to determine, Tsunade said. Jiraiya has assured me of his skills, but I would like to have you 3 assess his abilities. It's imperative to know how good he has become. Is that understood? Yes, the 3 Jonin said. Then I'll leave the details of the exams to you. The meeting came to an end. Asuma and Kurenai left together, speaking in hushed tones. Jiraiya couldn't hear what was being said, but he somehow didn't think they were talking about Naruto's test. There was a closeness between them that made Jiraiya's senses tingle. He would have giggled at the thought of these 2 dating, though he also didn't want to earn Kurenai's or Tsunade's ire, so he refrained from doing so. I'll see you later, Suheim, Jiraiya said as he walked up to the silver-haired Jonin who was leaving. Kakashi and I have some catching up to do. Is that so? Have a good time, Tsunade said, uncaring. Jiraiya almost felt like crying. She could have expressed a little more desire to keep me here. Jiraiya left the Hokage Tower with Kakashi and made it onto the busy streets. As they slipped past a few pedestrians, he reached into his ninja pouch and pulled out a book. Here you go, Kakashi, he said, holding it out for the man. This is the next volume of the Makeout Paradise series. It hasn't been released yet. Ah. Kakashi's gasp was like that of a man who'd been dying from thirst but hadn't realized it until water was placed in front of him. He grabbed the book with trembling hands, staring at it as though he was holding the holiest of holy grails. This is amazing. I can't wait to read it. I figured you would be excited. Jiraiya grinned at the knowledge that someone appreciated his work. He'd spent so much time with Naruto, who didn't seem to enjoy good literature even when it smacked him in the face, that he had forgotten what honest praise felt like. He sighed at the thought of his foolish apprentice. At least Kakashi understood what great literature was all about. Damn, ungrateful students. He and his father are cut from the same cloth. They're on the move, Jiraiya said suddenly. Kakashi stopped ogling his new book to look at Jiraiya, his expression stern despite having only one eye. By them, I'm guessing you mean the Akatsuki. That's right. I have no idea why they are moving now, but they have become more active. Perhaps they have managed to acquire all of the funding they need, or maybe there's some other reason. It doesn't change the fact that they're now going around, capturing Jinchuriki. Which means Naruto is one of their targets, Kakashi added, nodding. Tell me, Jiraiya-sama, just how strong is Naruto? That's hard to say, Jiraiya admitted. In just his standard state, Naruto is easily on par with most Jonin-level ninja. He has a knack of ninjutsu and fuinjutsu that rivals his parents, but he's not skilled in genjutsu. His taijutsu is about average. He has speed and power, and his technique is impeccable, but he isn't a monster like Guy or Rock Lee. I doubt there are many people in the world who can match those two in taijutsu. True. They walked around a group of children who were playing in the street, ninja, from the looks of it, and continued moving until they reached a small dango shop. They sat down and ordered some dango and tea. As they waited, Jiraiya continued talking. I've discovered a bit more about the Akatsuki. You already know that it's made up a 9S ranked missing ninja. These ninja work in pairs of 2. Itachi and Kisame are one pair. There was another pair that Naruto and I ran into. Kakuzu of Takigakure and Hidan of Yugakure. Both of them were definitely stronger than your average Jonin. I'm not even sure if you would be able to defeat one of them on your own. That's pretty high praise coming from you, Kakashi said as their dango arrived. Are they really that strong? Strong isn't accurate to describe them. Jiraiya picked up a stick of dango and took one of the dango spheres into his mouth. He chewed thoughtfully. If there was a lower and upper level, then these two would be on the lower rung of the tier. Even then, they managed to fight Naruto and myself to a standstill. They were weak compared to Itachi and Kisame, but they can't be underestimated. So it would seem, Kakashi mumbled as he grabbed a stick of dango for himself. It looks like we're going to have trouble on our hands. Yeah, Jiraiya said. Fortunately, I've informed our allies about Akatsuki's existence. It might not put a stop to their movements, but I hope we can at least limit their activities. XOX. Naruto's apartment building looked the same as he remembered, a slightly rundown complex with worn and faded walls that possessed an off-white color and numerous cracks. The roof was red and thatched around the edge, but it was flat in the center, which people could use to stand on. Not that anyone would. Naruto was one of the only people living there. As he walked up the slightly rickety stairs to his apartment, Naruto reached his door, then paused. The door wasn't ajar, but it was unlocked. He hadn't been there in several years. However, he was positive that the door had been locked. Naruto always made sure to lock the door because a lot of people used to break in when he was younger. He even set traps inside. Someone's inside. Outside of the door being unlocked, Naruto detected a presence inside, though his ability to sense people's presence wasn't good enough that he could tell who it was. Remaining cautious, Naruto opened the door and walked inside. His feet thumped against wooden tiles. He looked around at his one-bedroom apartment. The table sat in the center of the kitchen-living room. A strong but pleasant scent wafted through the room, and standing by the stove top, Temari was cooking something, not ramen. He frowned. It would have been nice if she had been cooking ramen. Temari, Naruto greeted as he closed the door behind him, what's with the outfit? When they had first met back at the Hokage's office, Temari had been wearing a black, short-sleeved kimono that went down to her calves. Now she was wearing an apron. Nothing else. Just the apron. Naruto stared at the unfettered glimpse of Temari's backside. Her ass was one of the tightest he'd ever seen. Every time she moved, it clenched and shook, showing off the muscles honed from over a decade of ninja training. She was standing at a slight profile, so he also had a perfect view of her side boob. There was a nipple poking out from her apron. Do you disapprove? Asked Temari. No, Naruto shook his head slowly. I'm just wondering where you picked up an apron. I don't remember owning one, much less one with so much lace. I just bought it at a store. Ah, sit down, Naruto. Dinner will be ready in just a bit. Naruto sat down, his eyes never leaving Temari. Seeing her like this made him remember their first time together. It had been during the incident where they were both trying to bust up a slave trading ring. They had noticed each other from a distance and engaged in a long-range battle, not knowing who the other person was, but assuming they were an enemy ninja hired to thwart them. After nearly an hour of battle, Temari had run out of chakra and Naruto went in for the kill, only to discover that he had been fighting Temari. After that, he and Temari had recovered and proceeded to destroy the slave traders together. They'd had sex that night. He still remembered exactly how everything had happened as if it was yesterday. XOX. It was over. Destroying the slave trading ring was a lot easier than he thought it would, but they didn't have any ninja or ronin wandering samurai guarding them, so he guessed it only made sense. Also, Naruto had a partner to help him. A large party was being held by the woman who'd been taken into captivity. Bonfires burned brightly in the clearing they had chosen, and the drinks they'd stolen from the slave traders were being passed around. It was midnight. That meant it was too late for such a large group to travel, which was why the women had decided to hold this party. Naruto sat on a log nursing his sake, watching as the women danced and drank their fill. They seemed awfully exuberant for a group that had been taken from their homes. It just went to show him the strength they possessed. Not everyone could shrug off being held captive like they had. "Not gonna join the party?" asked Temari as she sat down beside him. Shaking his head, Naruto said, "I think it would make them uncomfortable if I joined." "I think it would make them feel more grateful," Temari shot back. Chuckling, Naruto said, "You haven't changed a bit, have you? You're just as confident as I remember." "Of course," Temari said with a grin. "Asuna Kunoichi are nothing if not confident in ourselves." "Strong, beautiful, and confident," Naruto murmured. "You sound like the perfect woman." Temari perked up. "Do you like strong women?" "Who doesn't?" asked Naruto with a shrug. "Strong women are sexy." "Then, you think I'm sexy?" Naruto paused when he heard the inflection in Temari's voice. It was impossible to miss those seductive overtones, the one that made his spine tingle. He glanced at her out of the corner of his eye. She really had changed quite a bit. Her body had become more womanly, her breasts filled out her black kimono, her legs were even longer and more well-defined. Naruto was sure that if she pulled her kimono off, he would see that she had abs. "I always thought you were very pretty," Naruto admitted with a grin. "However, I'd say you've definitely become a lot sexier since I last saw you." Smiling, Temari stood up, grabbed his hand, and pulled him to his feet. "Come on," she said. "Let's join the festivities." Naruto let Temari drag him over to one of the bonfires, where he became surrounded by several different women, including Temari. The next morning, he and Temari would wake up surrounded by a bunch of girls. He would still be buried hilt deep inside of her. XOX. "Here you go," Temari said as she set the plate of kebabs on the table. "It was hard to prepare these since you don't have a grill. I hope you appreciate the trouble I went through to make all this." "A beautiful kunoichi is making me a meal," Naruto said, grinning. "How could I not appreciate it?" "Good answer." Temari smiled. Naruto grabbed the first kebab as Temari sat down, slowly pulling off a piece of meat and sticking it into his mouth. A burst of juicy flavor hit his taste buds. It had a strong seasoning that didn't quite overpower the meat. "This is definitely Temari's cooking. You were thinking something really rude just now, weren't you?" Temari accused. Naruto shook his head in denial. "I was thinking that this was definitely your cooking. It has your unique signature." "And what is my signature?" "Lots of spice." "Are you saying I'm hot?" "Yes." In one smooth, fluid motion, Temari had stood up, placed her bare foot on the chair between his legs, pushed him away from the table, and then swung her thigh around until she was straddling him. She took the still mostly unfinished kebab from his hands before grabbing one of the vegetables on it and pulling it off. She put it in her mouth. Leaning forward, she offered the food in her mouth to Naruto, who gladly took a bite, swallowed, took another bite, swallowed, and then claimed her lips in a kiss. Temari pulled back. "Ah, ah, ah," she chided, wagging the kebab in her hand back and forth. "Not until you finish everything I made for you." Naruto would have scarfed the food down right then and there, but he knew Temari better than that. He waited until she held the kebab out to him. He ate it quickly. Temari blinked as she realized the kebab was gone. Then she discarded the bare stick and grabbed another. Are you that hungry? I'm that hungry for you. His words made Temari send him a heated look. You're getting a lot better with those lines of yours. Perhaps I practice in front of a mirror. I could see you doing that. Now, eat. Naruto did eat. He consumed everything that Temari offered. There had been 5 kebabs in total, and he devoured each of them as Temari fed him. While feeding him, Temari had been slowly grinding her crotch against his leg. She wasn't wearing panties, so he'd been more than capable of feeling her lips as they left a trail against his pant leg. The wetness from her lips was staining them. Naruto, I want you to kiss me. Such a demanding woman you are. Does that mean you won't? I never said that. Naruto placed a hand on the back of Temari's neck and pulled her into a searing kiss. She could probably taste the food she had made on his tongue, but she didn't seem to care. She kissed back. Naruto reached out with his hand and undid the braids in her hair, allowing the long strands to come undone. No one could have guessed that Temari's hair was over half a meter in length. That done, he threaded one hand through her hair, fingers caressing her scalp, while the other landed on her backside and stayed there. Temari's tongue was much smaller than his, and as it probed his mouth, he closed his lips around it and sucked. He enjoyed both the feel of her tongue in his mouth and the moans that she produced. Her ass felt amazing in his hand. As they continued to sloppily kiss, he squeezed the flesh of her bare bottom, reveling in the sensual combination of hard muscles and soft flesh. Naruto enjoyed the way it clenched as he massaged it. However, all too soon, simple touches and caresses wasn't enough. A squeak emitted from Temari's mouth as Naruto stood up, taking her with him. He didn't break their kiss as he swept the plate and everything else off the table, set her down, and switched from kissing her mouth to sucking on her neck. Her mouth no longer hampered by his, Temari opened hers in a loud moan that rang to the ceiling. Naruto reached down and quickly undid his pants. Temari helped him undo the top 2 buttons before he slid them down, and then she slid off the table, turned around, bent over, and placed both hands on the surface to keep herself supported. Her lips were dripping wet. Trails of nectar ran down her inner thighs. She turned her head to look at him out of the corner of her eye. What are you waiting for? Don't you recognize an invitation when you see one? You never let up with the insults, do you? Of course not. It's not in my nature. Naruto grabbed Temari's hips and lined himself up with her, pausing for only a second. Believe me, I know, he said before plunging himself into her. Temari gasped as he filled her up, and Naruto let out a low groan as he pushed himself until he was resting against her hips. The sight of their connection, of his crotch bumping against her ass, made him growl with desire. Pound me, Naruto. I want it fast and hard. With pleasure. Naruto pulled out until just his head was still inside, and then he thrust himself back inside. Temari screamed as her back arched. Naruto pulled out again, and then thrust back inside again. Pull out. Thrust in. He repeated this, picking up speed with each consecutive thrust. Temari's insides were hot and wet, and her walls clamped around him as he set a hard pace. Her apron had come loose as he pounded into her. Naruto undid the bow and pulled the apron off, allowing Temari's modest breasts to become visible as they bounced back and forth. He could only see the occasional glimpse of them, but he leaned over until his chest was against her back, and then he reached up and cupped her breasts with each hand. Oh, fucking hell, Naruto. Not my breasts. You know those are, sensitive. You can't expect me not to grab them when they're swinging in front of me like this, Naruto growled in her ear as he pinched her nipples. Your tits are irresistible. They are pretty sexy, right? Fuck. Temari was cut off at the end of her sentence when Naruto suddenly half thrust into her, pulled back, and then thrust all the way. Damn it, Naruto. Let me finish my, on. Not happening. Temari was bent all the way over, her face on the table, standing on her tiptoes. Her calves were quivering and her ass jiggled as he slapped against it with his continuous thrusts in and out. Love juices dripped down her legs, creating glistening trails that mixed with the sweat forming on her skin. No longer satisfied with just pumping into her from behind, Naruto pulled her up and fell backwards into his chair. He took his hands from her breasts, but only so he could grab hold of her thighs and spread them lewdly. It was probably a good thing no one else was with them. After resting her legs on either side of his thighs, Naruto leaned his head over her shoulder and began thrusting his hips upwards. Oh, Tamari was unable to speak thanks to his actions. She just screamed as Naruto thrust his hips up into her from below. From this angle, he had the perfect glimpse of Tamari's boobs as they bounced up and down. Her chest was covered in sweat, and her pink nipples had hardened into points. He would have loved to suck them into his mouth, twirl them around with his tongue, bite them, but he decided that could wait until later. Right now he wanted to make her scream. Oh, fuck, 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 fuck. Naruto. You're pounding into my womb. Your thick dick is knocking on the entrance of my womb. Do you want me to stop? Are you stupid? Go harder. I was planning to do just that. Her insides were squeezing him like a vice as she clenched her muscles. Naruto knew it was a kunoichi technique. She was using her chakra to make them close around him. All kunoichi were taught seduction techniques for missions or in the event they were kidnapped and needed to seduce someone to escape. To Naruto, it was like a combination of heaven and hell. Naruto reached up with his right hand, grabbing onto one of her nipples as her breast bounced up and down. Once he had it, he tugged. Tamari screamed. Her inner walls, already wrapped around him, tightened, while streams of lubricant gushed from her entrance, coating him in a slick wetness and dripping onto the chair. Fuck, fuck, Naruto. I'm coming. Naruto gritted his teeth as Tamari came hard. Her walls clamped around him, her thighs quivered, her breasts bounced and jiggled as her back arched against him. Adding one final push to take her even further, Naruto reached down and rubbed her clit. Tamari's shout became incoherent as she spasmed against him for several seconds. She twitched once, twice, thrice, and then went limp against him, her back and shoulders slumping. Feeling himself lose all of his will, Naruto groaned against Tamari's back as he came. Tamari stiffened, but she didn't scream, and moments later, she went slack again. Kissing her back and neck, Naruto reached up and roughly fondled her breasts. His partner let out an appreciative moan. Naruto. Let's take this to the bed. Naruto paused. That's a good idea. Lifting Tamari into his arms, Naruto stood up and headed for the bedroom. For the next several hours, their moans, squeals, groans, and curses echoed across the apartment complex. It was probably a good thing that no one lived there besides him. XOX. The desert was a horrible place to live. It was hot, dry, stretched out for miles with nothing else around, and was just generally unpleasant. It made his clothes stick to his skin, made sweat pour out from beneath his straw hat. Honestly, how Sasori could stand to be in that puppet of his was beyond him. Deidara supposed he should have just been glad that it was night time. How far is it to Sunagakur, Sasori Dana? It'll be several days' walk from here. Several days. Che, we would have been better off flying there on one of my creations. I dislike being on top of anything that could explode. I have perfect control over my creations, I'll have you know. Besides, even if it did explode, that would simply make you a part of my art. You have no concept of what true art is. I think the one who has no idea about what true art is you. As Deidara bickered with Sasori, the two made their way ever closer to Sunagakur and its Jinchuriki. XOX. Naruto lost track of time as he and Tamari had sex. The warmth of her naked body as she ground against him was like falling between heaven and hell. Her soft hands as she touched him, the wetness engulfing him as she rode him to several more orgasms, the feel of her breasts, hard nipples poking against his skin, and the way her sweat-slicked body felt as it glided along him, it was a euphoric feeling, like floating through the sky while simultaneously dropping toward the earth. Her moans were the notes that spurred him on, pushing him to keep going, feeding his desire to feel more of her for as long as their bodies held out. Every lyrical note she released made him hard all over again. It had been a long time since he'd felt the touch of a woman. The last person he'd slept with had actually been Tamari herself, and that had been 6 months ago. He probably could have found other women to sleep with, but even if Naruto didn't intend on entering a true relationship with anyone, that didn't mean he wanted to sleep with someone he had no feelings for. After they had finished, Naruto and Tamari laid side by side on the bed, their breathing heavy, rasping. It echoed all around them. Despite having impressive stamina himself, Naruto felt like he'd been running for months without rest. He guessed that was the price he paid for several hours of non-stop sex. The covers had long since become a mess. Sighing, Naruto reached down, grabbed the covers that had become tangled around their feet, and pulled it over them. The moment he did, Tamari turned and snuggled against his side, rubbing her body into him. That was nice, she murmured, her haggard voice making her exhaustion more than evident. It was, he agreed, and then paused. Tamari, are you sure this is okay? There was no response for a minute. Tamari had to know what he was talking about. She was a smart woman. Naruto was a half-demon, a term that he used loosely to describe his immortality. Since Akane technically was not a demon, he was not really a half-demon. Still, half-demon was the most appropriate term that Naruto could think of to describe himself. He wouldn't age. He wouldn't die. 100 years from now, maybe even as few as 40, Tamari would be gone from this world, but Naruto would still be there, living proof of a time that no longer existed. Because of his immortality, it was hard to have a normal relationship with anyone, which was one of the reasons he'd done his best to maintain his distance from others. He wanted to avoid becoming attached to them. He didn't want to fall in love, only to watch as that love was ripped from his arms by the cruel hands of time. Yes, this is fine, she said at last, kissing his shoulder. I'm fine with things as they are. Yeah, but, I said it's fine, Naruto. Slapping his chest, Tamari decided to add injury to insult and bite his shoulder hard enough to leave a mark. When she settled back down, she continued. I'm not really interested in having a normal relationship. Getting married. Starting a family. These things hold no appeal for me. As ninja, they walked with death. It was their constant companion. Every mission was one where the threat of death loomed, and those who survived were considered lucky. That was why a lot of shinobi didn't get married unless they lived to the age where they were often forced into retirement. Of course, even in this time of peace, most ninja didn't live long enough to reach 40, so retiring was often a moot point. Perhaps that explained, at least to some degree, why she didn't mind sleeping with Naruto despite knowing they would never have anything more than this. He didn't know if that excused their relationship. It probably didn't. However, it was the only reason he could come up with for why Tamari, or anyone really, wouldn't take issue with his sexual proclivities. I just wanted to make sure, Naruto said, looking at the ceiling. Was that a new crack? I feel sort of like I'm taking away the possibility for you to have a normal relationship. And you feel guilty. It wasn't a question. Sometimes. Naruto answered anyway. Well, you can stop feeling guilty. I didn't start doing this with you so you could wallow in self-loathing. Tamari sighed and pulled herself closer, until her warm body was all he could feel on his left side. Now get some sleep. I'm tired and don't want to talk about something so pointless anymore. Right. Closing his eyes, Naruto lost himself to the warm embrace of Temari's arms and legs as they wrapped around him. Chapter 50. Jonin exams, start. Naruto woke up the next morning despite having spent most of the night having sex with Tamari. She was still in bed with him, cuddling with him as though he were a body pillow. Her naked body against his was one of the most glorious feelings he knew. Tamari was only the second woman he'd ever slept with. The first had been Koyuki. However, where Koyuki had been a one-time thing, a moment of weakness for her and acceptance for him, he and Tamari had slept together at least 5 other times. That time 6 months ago had been just one of their trysts. Extricating himself from Temari's hold, Naruto crawled out of bed, ambled out of the room, and made his way to the bathroom. He took a quick shower to freshen up. After getting dressed, he created a shadow clone and sent it to go shopping. He hadn't lived here in 3 years, so he didn't have much in the way of groceries. Tamari had only been able to cook because she had gone out of her way to buy groceries for dinner. Checking the pantry to see if he had anything, Naruto sighed when he realized that even his tea leaves were expired. There was no way he could give Tamari expired food. Frowning, Naruto looked out the window. The sun had already risen, mostly, and so the store should be open. He hoped it wouldn't take long for his clone to finish shopping. Roughly 10 minutes after his clone had left, it returned with a bag of groceries and, to his surprise, 2 cups of coffee. You bought us coffee? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow. I figured all of our tea leaves would also be expired. The clone shrugged. He thought about that for a moment before nodding his approval. Good thinking. Naruto and his clone shared a thumbs up before the grocery bag exchanged hands. The clone then disappeared in a puff of smoke, vanishing as though it had never been, leaving only the groceries and coffee behind. Conversing with your own clone first thing in the morning. A voice said behind him. You always were an oddball. Naruto turned around to face Temari, who had thrown a shirt over her body. It was at least one size too small, having been one of his old shirts from 3 years ago. He took a moment to appreciate the way the shirt outlined her bust. Then he grinned at her. You say that, but you're sleeping with this oddball. True enough. Temari wandered into the living room with short, surprisingly feminine steps. Her walk seemed daintier than normal. Then again, he mostly saw her on missions or when training, and when they had slept together, they usually didn't have time to enjoy the next morning because they were on a mission. While Temari sat down in a chair, Naruto boiled some water and ground the coffee beans. It was fortunate that he had experience in brewing coffee. It had been one of the things Jiraiya had taught him about. The old perv had said that it was an important survival trait. I got you some coffee, Naruto said as he walked up to her, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. She took one of the mugs from his hand and grinned. You mean your clone got me some coffee? My clone is me, so it's the same difference. Right, same difference. Naruto gave Temari the evil eye, but she just smiled at him, her lips stretching so wide that her eyes were forced close. He'd seen that look before in the mirror. It always came after a good prank. The realization that she was stringing him along made him sigh. Already knowing what was inside the bag because of his clone, he asked, how would you like your eggs? Unfertilized, came the immediate reply. Funny girl. Scrambled or sunny side up. Temari tilted her head in thought as she sat down at the table and nursed her coffee. Let's do scrambled. It'll make things easier. Scrambled it is. Naruto went over to the stove, pulled the eggs, salt, and cheese out of the grocery bag, and then set about making breakfast. As he cracked open several eggs and placed them in the pan, he watched Temari. She had drawn her legs up on the chair, small feet resting against the edge, toes wiggling. For just a moment, barely even a second, he allowed himself to imagine what it would be like if he and Temari were a married couple. It would probably be a lot like this, he guessed. It was a nice dream. But that's all it is. Just a dream. He dispelled the dream with a shake of his head. Dreams were nice, but there was little point in dwelling on them. Naruto finished cooking the eggs, having added salt and cheese before stirring it all together, and then walked over to the table alongside a clone that was carrying 2 plates filled with the food he'd made. That's a good look for you, he said as he sat down, referring to both her choice in clothing and the messiness of her hair. Consequently, her frazzled hair was the result of him running his fingers through it during last night's passionate tryst. Temari grinned as she gratefully accepted a utensil from the clone. You like it? This shirt is one of yours. I'm aware. Naruto took a bite out of his eggs, chewed thoughtfully, and then swallowed. Any plans for today? I'm still in the process of getting ready for the Chunin exams, so I'll probably have to walk around with that lazy bum you call a friend, Temari began. That's why I'm here in the first place. I'll probably stick around for another day or 2. Which means you'll be here until it's time for me to take the Jonin exams, Naruto muttered. Yep. Tsunade had said that it would take 2 days to prepare for the Jonin exam. Naruto didn't know what the Jonin exam entailed, though it would definitely be far more difficult than the Chunin exams. He was confident that he could succeed and become a Jonin, though. Jiraiya hadn't just trained him to become stronger. After breakfast, Temari headed for the shower. She had asked Naruto if he wanted to join her, but he had politely declined, though not because he was reticent to the idea. He didn't want to become too used to her presence in his apartment. It might cause him to wish for more out of their relationship than he already had. While he was washing the dishes, the doorbell rang, making him frown as he wondered who the heck would come at this time in the morning. It wasn't Jiraiya. He slept in late. It probably wasn't Kakashi either. He would be too busy reading porn. That left just Sakura or Tenten. He sighed and, after he finished drying his current plate, he set it down and wandered to the door. Looking through the eye-hole confirmed that it wasn't Tenten. It was Sakura. He opened the door. Morning, Sakura, he greeted. Something I can help you with. Naruto, good. Morning, Sakura said in a bright, cheerful voice as she placed her hands behind her back. There's nothing you can help me with. I was just wondering if you'd like me to show you around Konoha. A lot's changed since you've been away, you know. Well, that was a nice gesture from Sakura, though he didn't think he needed her help. He did at least consider the possibility of letting her show him around. Then again, he could also spend that time with Ten-chan or Yugi-chan, which had been his plan after Temari left. Before he could make a decision, or rather, give voice to his decision, Temari wandered back into the living room. She was only clad in a towel, so a good portion of her body was exposed. The towel wrapped around her middle, showcasing and pushing together her modest chest while also reveling in the curvature of her hips and waist. Several marks on her neck from where he'd sucked too hard shone visibly in the natural sunlight filtering in through the window and doorway. "Hey, Naruto," Temari began, "where do you put your shampoo?" Sakura and Temari stared at each other, but while Temari appeared relatively unbothered by the sudden situation, Sakura was anything but. Her face was slowly turning the same shade of cherry blossom pink as her hair. Bright green eyes had already grown to the size of dishpans, and her arms were shaking as she clenched her hands into fists. It looked like Mount Sakura was seconds from violently exploding into extreme violence. "Naruto," Sakura muttered, "what is going on here?" "I think that should be obvious," Temari answered for him. Sakura looked like she needed a moment to digest this situation. She stared at Temari, who had crossed her arms and was giving the pink-haired girl an amused look, and then she switched her gaze to Naruto. Had this been years ago, before he learned the secrets of the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto would have already been cowering. He hadn't done that in years, however. He also wasn't about to start now, which was why he met her gaze with an even, calm expression of his own. I suppose I don't have any right to say who you can be in a relationship with," Sakura said at last, pressing a hand to her forehead and sighing as though admitting this was painful. "You definitely do not," Naruto agreed. "I also won't tell anyone about this," Sakura added as she gave him a stern look. "But I think you should at least let Yugito and Tenten know that you're dating Temari." "Dating?" Naruto questioned, while Temari suddenly burst into loud, raucous laughter. Sakura glared at her. "What's so funny?" Sorry." Temari held her stomach as she continued snickering. "It's just that you seem to have the wrong impression about us." "Huh?" Sakura scratched the back of her head. Naruto could only sigh. He could already tell. This is going to be an awkward conversation. XOX. Temari left before Naruto even started explaining the situation to Sakura. She had work to do and didn't have time to sit around while he talked about their sex life. That left him to explain everything, which he did as he and Sakura sat around his table. To his surprise, Sakura did not get violent or even angry at him after he finished explaining his unusual relationship with Temari. She had simply sighed and said that she wouldn't judge him for it. Naruto had the feeling that she was judging him and just not saying it, but he couldn't fault her for that. Sakura was a lot more pure than he was. She believed that sex was all about love, that it was something you did only with the person you loved, the person you planned to marry. Given her devotion to a single person, Sasuke, he couldn't fault her for that line of thought. Of course, all that said, it wasn't like he didn't love Temari. He did. They just couldn't have a normal relationship. It had nothing to do with being from different villages and everything to do with his immortality. There was no point in getting married to someone who would eventually die and leave him alone. The next 2 days were spent refamiliarizing himself with the village alongside Tenten, who he had roped into coming with him. She had agreed to it when he asked, stating that she didn't have anything else to do. He figured that meant Team Guy wasn't taking any missions at the moment. He eventually learned that the reason why she wasn't taking missions was because Neji had become a Jonin. Since he was an elite who could take teams, he often worked with different Chunin and Jonin to familiarize himself with other squads. According to Tenten, Neji had said it was so he could learn what it meant to be a good leader. Naruto thought Neji was just a perfectionist who tried too hard. While Naruto didn't do anything too strenuous, he and Tenten did spar a bit. He wanted to become more acquainted with her style of fighting in case they went on a mission together. Tenten had been all too happy to spar with him. He guessed she was feeling restless since she hadn't been on many missions in the past few months. It was after one of those sparring matches that Naruto learned about Yugito. So she's Kumo's ambassador to Konoha, but she's currently off on a mission somewhere, huh? Yep. She goes on a lot of missions, so she's usually only in the village for a few days before going back out on another mission. Sometimes she's gone for days, and sometimes she's gone for months, especially when she's called back to Kumo. That's so. He and Tenten were sitting on the grassy field of the Team 7 training ground, eating a bento lunch that had been prepared for them by Tenten's mother. Her mother was a slender woman with hair similar to her daughter's, though she didn't have Tenten's signature panda buns, just long brown hair. It was surprising, but Naruto had never met Tenten's mother until just yesterday. The lunch she had prepared wasn't ramen, but it was still pretty good, a mixture of vegetables and fried chicken with a side of rice. You really have become strong, Tenten said. So have you. I'm impressed by how well you can use all those weapons. You used to only be capable of throwing them. Yeah, I've trained some, but you've really gotten strong. Tenten gave him a slight stink eye. You were going easy on me. Well, yes, but I had the benefit of training under a Sannin. Naruto leaned back on his hands and looked at the clear, blue sky. Jiraiya might be a pervy old man who peeps on women when they're bathing, but he's also stronger than anyone I know. Even after all this time, I still haven't beaten him in a single spar. Well, he's also got a lot of experience, Tenten said, picking out a piece of fried chicken and popping it into her mouth. Jiraiya, Tsunade, Orochimaru, they've been ninja for longer than we've been alive, and they experienced war, while the most we've experienced was the small one-day battle against Suna during the Chunin exam. I know. I'm not saying I don't know why I haven't been able to win. Anyway, this was nice. Tenten laid down on the grass, spreading her arms out. It's been a long time since I've been able to really cut loose. Neji and Lee have been so busy with their own training and missions that they don't really give me the time of day anymore. Doesn't seem very much like a team. Naruto paused, head cocked to the side. Then again, one of my teammates betrayed Konoha, so I'm not sure I have any right to talk about acting like a team. It's not like Sasuke betraying the village was your fault, Tenten said, sitting back up to place her hand over his. Sasuke was always a loose cannon, from what I saw, and Orochimaru offered him power. It was only a matter of time before he betrayed the village. If he didn't betray it for Orochimaru, he would have betrayed it for whoever offered him the most power. Yeah, I know that. Naruto didn't blame himself for Sasuke's choice. It wasn't his fault his friend didn't think he was gaining enough power. Sasuke had been impatient and took the perceived shortest path to power. That was on him and no one else, and it was why Naruto couldn't be blamed for whatever happened to him. He and Tenten continued to talk, though their conversation was mostly about inane matters. They traded training tips, spoke of missions, and bantered about daily life. While they were discussing the merits between weapons and hand-to-hand combat, Kakashi appeared before them in a swirl of leaves. Well, this is an interesting get-together, Kakashi said in greeting. His nose was buried in a book, which Naruto recognized as Jiraiya's latest Makeout Paradise volume. Kakashi-sensei, Naruto and Tenten greeted at the same time. Hello, you two. Kakashi's only visible eye curved upward in his famous U-shaped eye smile. Naruto, I have come to tell you that the selected time for you to take your Jonin exam is going to be tomorrow at 4 am sharp. Meet us at the Anbu headquarters. Jonin exam. Tenten gawked at Kakashi before turning to Naruto, her face slowly morphing into a pout. You didn't tell me you were taking the Jonin exams. I couldn't really find a good time to slip it into conversation, Naruto admitted with a reluctant shrug. So, tomorrow at 4, which in Kakashi time means I should meet you at around noon, right? Very funny, Kakashi said. Unfortunately, I'm not the only one proctoring this exam, so I can't come late like I usually do. So you admit to arriving at all of our meetings late on purpose, Naruto said with a sigh. All right. 4 in the morning. I'll be there. I'll be waiting. As Kakashi disappeared within a puff of smoke, Naruto thought about what he would be doing, the Jonin exams. Knowing that he was on the verge of becoming an elite should have made him ecstatic. The village was recognizing him for his talent. That should have been a great thing. He should have been happy. But he wasn't. Naruto was immortal. While he had come to accept what that meant, he had also resigned himself to the many things in life that he couldn't have. Marriage, family, Hokage. Almost all of the goals that Naruto had set for himself when he was younger were now out of his reach. He had accepted that. However, in accepting this, the emotions that he had once felt, the joy he would have experienced at getting closer to his goals, was diminished. What was the point in being happy when climbing the ninja ladder no longer led to Hokage? Beside him, still pouting, Tenten said, I can't believe you didn't tell me about this. I should have been the first person you told. Sorry. I somehow get the feeling that you really aren't all that sorry. Quote ellipsis quote. XOX. Not many people knew where the Anbu headquarters was located, and in fact, its location was technically not even known to the Anbu themselves, though not for reasons one might imagine. Since the Anbu were the black ops of the village, no one could know the location of their base. There were many secrets stored inside. If these secrets were to be leaked, then the results could be catastrophic. To that end, the Anbu headquarters required Anbu members to take a secret route that led them there. However, the route was said to be so dizzying that not even the Anbu knew where they were going. It was sort of like being led somewhere while blindfolded. This was what Naruto had learned from his preliminary investigation. Naruto walked into a bar called the Rusty Kunai. His shinobi sandals thumped against the wooden tiles. While the name sounded ominous and dingy, the bar was anything but. Warm lighting, polished tables and booths, music playing in the background. It looked like a perfectly legitimate establishment, and the many patrons present who were drinking, laughing, and having a good time, seemed to agree. Naruto looked around for a moment. No one was paying attention to him. Why would they? To them, he must have just been another patron. He walked up to the bar uncontested, sat down and waited until the barkeep, a bear of a man with a bald head and several scars running down his face, finished with his last customer. I've been told that you have some good drinks here, Naruto said. The bartender grunted. We've got a few things. What'll ya be having? The diving crow on the rocks. The bartender paused. We don't sell that anymore. If you want that kind of drink, you'll need to make your way down the alley off to the side here. There's a bar called Ninja's Paradise. Go in there and ask the barkeep that I recommended you. Careful not to get lost. Thank you. Now that he had the information he wanted, Naruto left the Rusty Kunai and traveled into the nearest alley on the right. All the while he was cursing Kakashi. Kakashi had told him to meet him at the Anbu headquarters. The problem was that he didn't know where the Anbu headquarters was. In fact, no one really seemed to know where it was. Upon realizing this, he'd gone to Tsunade and asked her about the Anbu headquarters location, but the Hokage had just smirked and told him to find it himself. The fact that she had not given him the location meant only one thing. The test had already begun. This was a lot like the first stage of the Chunin exams. Naruto remembered how he, Sakura, and Sasuke had gone to the academy and run into that door with the genjutsu over the door number to trick people into thinking they were on the third floor, when they were really on the second. A lot of genin not worthy of even taking the test had been weeded out by that. More would have disappeared if it hadn't been for Sasuke. This was similar to that. If Naruto couldn't find the Anbu headquarters on his own, he wasn't even worthy of taking the Jonin exam. As Naruto moved down the alley, he realized why the barkeep told him to be careful about getting lost. This place wasn't an alley so much as it was a maze. There were multiple turns that branched off in numerous directions and more lateral passages than he knew what to do with, which branched off into even more lateral passages. When Naruto tried to climb the wall with chakra, he slipped. He tried again, but his chakra disappeared and he fell back down. The walls were made out of a chakra-absorbing material that made it impossible to cling to the surface with chakra. Well, if this was the Anbu headquarters, they had probably done this to keep people from getting a bird's-eye view of the place. It made sense, but it still galled him. Naruto was forced to make his way through this convoluted maze, taking turns at random, marking the place he passed so he would know where he was going. No matter how many places he traveled, the Ninja's Paradise bar never appeared in his sights. It felt like he was going around in circles. I think that's because I am going around in circles. Naruto looked at the place on the wall that he was sure he had marked. It wasn't marked anymore. However, he had left a seal underneath the mark. It had been an echolocation seal that let him know where he was in correspondence with it. When it was wiped away, he had felt the seal disappear. Someone is making things difficult. Knowing better than to let himself be led around, Naruto unrolled his scroll and released the contents with a Fuin Kai. As smoke from the seal being released engulfed him, he created a shadow clone that transformed into a crumpled can. The smoke cleared. Naruto stood up with calligraphy brush in hand and marked the spot again. And then he left. He didn't look back. He kept walking, until his clone dispelled to send him information that someone was, in fact, wiping away the seal. The clone had been dispelled before it could look at whoever had destroyed it, but that also told him a lot. 1. This person was definitely a Jonin. 2. They were skilled at detecting chakra. From this, he concluded that whoever had attacked him was probably a Hyuga. There were no skilled Jonin sensor ninja. I can't advance until I defeat this Hyuga. Naruto frowned and quickly went through a mental checklist of everything he knew about the Hyuga clan. They relied on the Byakugan, which gave them 360 degrees of vision, allowed them to see through walls, and gave extraordinarily gifted individuals the ability to see Tenketsu, the points where chakra was expelled. Their fighting style relied heavily on the use of their eyes. Sneaking up on them is going to be impossible, Naruto thought as he kept walking, not giving any indication as to whether he realized the clone had dispelled or not. That means I can only assault them from the front, but to do that, I need to find them, and it's clear that this person is using passages in the walls to follow me. I would have spotted them long before now, otherwise. If this person was a Hyuga, then simply hiding wouldn't work. A Hyuga could see chakra. They would notice if he tried to hide simply by the chakra he emitted. But what if I spread the chakra evenly through this maze? It was worth a shot. Naruto finally stopped walking and closed his eyes. He created a single-hand seal, Tori, or the bird seal, and then channeled his chakra. A soft breeze emitted from his body and spread out in all directions. It flowed along the maze, spreading quickly and carrying his chakra across the entire area, evenly distributing it so no one place had any more or less chakra than any other. If this person is a Hyuga, that should keep them from finding me. Naruto then created several shadow clones and had them spread out. Him and his clones then used the camouflage technique and hid themselves. Seconds later, a wall opened on his left and a figure emerged. Donning a tan cloak and a mask, Naruto could see nothing of their face. Anbu. Or someone disguised as Anbu. The person looked around. Naruto could almost detect the frown they wore. His clones already knew the plan, so Naruto counted down to 3 before, like lightning, he burst from his hiding spot with the other clones. Naruto had to give this guy credit, he was good. Immediately after he and his clones appeared, this person sprang into action, adopting the traditional gentle fist stance of the Hyuga clan. 4 of his clones were quickly dispatched when they tried to surrounding him. One had pain shoot through its chest from a finger poke. Another was dispelled by a shoulder jab. The second to last received a backhand, while the last clone got hit by a double palm thrust. On any other occasion, this would have been the time for Naruto to retreat, but not today. The Hyuga was still blind thanks to his jutsu. They couldn't see chakra since he'd cloaked the entire area in his chakra. That meant they were vulnerable. It was easy to see from how this Hyuga wasn't attacking his Tenketsu, but simply injecting chakra into his clones. Several chakra chains shot from Naruto's sleeves before his opponent could recover. They wrapped around the Hyuga. Before his opponent had a chance to break them with their chakra, Naruto leapt into the air and drilled them with a hard double heel kick that sent the person flying backward, where they crashed into a wall and slowly slid down. While they were disoriented, Naruto knelt beside this person and pressed a kunai to his neck. "Where is Ninja's Paradise?" The figure on the ground paused. "There is no Ninja's Paradise. To get into the Anbu headquarters, you have to travel through the passage that I just opened." Now it was Naruto's turn to pause. "Neji." The figure froze. "I don't know who that is." "I'm sure," Naruto chuckled. Now he realized why Team Guy hadn't been on many missions. Neji was an Anbu. His team probably didn't know that because Anbu weren't allowed to reveal that they were Anbu, unless they were retired like Kakashi. "Anyway, you said to head through this passage." "Yes." "Okay. See ya later, Neji," Naruto said as he wandered into the passage. "I'm not Neji." The shout came to him just before the door closed. Chuckling, Naruto continued on his way. XOX. In a room with a moderate amount of light, Kakashi stood alongside Kurenai and Asuma as they watched Naruto enter through the passage that Neji had exited. They were watching Naruto through a television. Since televisions and cameras were expensive, being a form of technology that had only been created a few years ago, they were only borrowing it for this test. Well, Kakashi looked at his two compatriots. What do you two think? He's pretty good, Kurenai admitted. Not only did he realize that someone was following him, but he managed to neutralize them in an expedient manner. That's marginalizing Naruto's accomplishment, Asuma declared. He not only figured out that someone was following him, but he figured out they were a Hyuga after only a single incident, and he discovered a way to blind the Hyuga's Byakugan. That technique he used right before Neji-kun came out was a wind technique that evenly distributed his chakra through the entire alley, which made it impossible for Neji to continue following him through the wall and forced him outside. Not only is that a Jonin-level tactic, but the kind of control necessary for wind manipulation of that nature is something a regular Chunin could never obtain. Kakashi had to agree with Asuma. Naruto had definitely grown a lot, and it wasn't just in strength. His tactics, the way he used his head instead of just brute force, it was proof that he'd grown as a person since the Chunin exams. Well, I'd say he passed the first test, wouldn't you? Asked Kakashi. Yes, he did well, Kurenai agreed. Asuma blew out some smoke and said, I third that. Then let's go and greet him, Kakashi said. He'll be coming down this way any second now. XOX. The hallway that Naruto found himself in only had one direction he could go. Down. It was a good thing because he had no desire to run around anymore, especially not after that maze. He went down several flights of stairs, a couple ladders, and eventually found himself wandering through a long hallway composed of gray, dull cement. When he reached the end, Naruto was met by three people. Kakashi-sensei. Kurenai-sensei. Asuma-sensei, he greeted, staring at each of them in turn before focusing on the two who weren't his senseis. I guess you two are the remaining proctors. That's right, Kurenai said with a smile. Congratulations on passing the first test, Asuma added. Follow us, Naruto, Kakashi said. We'll lead you to the second portion of the Jonin exams. Okay. Naruto looked up at the ceiling as they walked. Having gone so far down, Naruto understood that they were now underneath the village. He never imagined there would be such a vast network. Located under Konoha, but when he thought about it, Naruto realized that these underground networks were likely a way to defend against hostile invasions. Attacking ninja would come in, and Konoha would use these networks to hide and ambush their enemies. It was a great strategy. They walked through a door, which opened into a massive, circular room. Pillars surrounded a raised platform, stretching up to a ceiling that he couldn't see, disappearing into darkness. It made him wonder how far below ground he was. Kakashi, Kurenai, and Asuma directed him toward the raised platform, where someone else was waiting for him. She had dark hair in a similar pineapple style to Shikamaru, though hers wasn't quite as lazily done. Her outfit was the same as he remembered. She wore a tan trench coat over fishnet, a skirt that gave tantalizing glimpses of bare leg, and heeled shinobi sandals. On her right thigh was a kunai pouch. Enko Ne-chan, Naruto said in surprise. Are you part of this test? That's right. Enko nodded. When Kakashi told me what was going to happen, I just knew that I had to be a part of it. After all, I wanted to greet the guy who couldn't even be bothered to say hi to me after returning from the village. Naruto took a hesitant step back as Kakashi, Kurenai, and Asuma stood off to the side. You know, it's not that I didn't want to see you. It's just that you weren't around when I did go see you. You mean when your clone came to my place? Enko's smile widened. That's not you coming to see me. That's you being so lazy that you couldn't be bothered. What's more, you've had 2 days to come and see me, but you didn't. A kunai flicked out of the sleeve of her left arm and into her hand. She raised it to her lips, stuck out her tongue, and licked it. Well, I'm going to show you what happens when you decide to ignore this, Ne-chan. Naruto gulped. Your second test is a no-holds-barred match against Enko here, Kakashi said. While the no-killing rule applies just like it did in the Chunin exams, anything else goes. Naruto gazed at Enko as she licked her kunai while giving him a look that would have been seductive on someone else but was frightening on her. Well, shit. Are you two ready? Asked Kakashi. Enko grinned and nodded. Naruto was not ready, but he nodded anyway. Kakashi raised his arm. Then, and dropped it. Start. Naruto wasn't even given time to think before Enko held out her sleeves and unleashed several white serpents at him. Sanae Jashu. With his speed and fleet-footedness, Naruto was able to dance around the snakes. He performed hand seals at the same time. Kei's no Ken. Wind gathered in his hand, condensing, sharpening, forming a blade, which Naruto used to cut down the snakes after dodging them. He spun left. A snake lost its head. He shuffled right. One of the serpents was split down the middle. Naruto continued to dance, moving in a ceaseless flow until all the snakes had been destroyed. Enko hadn't been idle. She had used that time to close the distance between them. Naruto leaned back as her hand flashed out quicker than a coiled snake striking at prey. His hair ruffled as her fingers flew past him, their shape reminiscent of a snake. Already knowing what was coming, Naruto twisted his body away before Enko brought the hand down, and then gently nudged her fist aside so it went wide. Now's my chance. Spinning on the ball of his left foot, Naruto lashed at Enko with a spinning heel kick, which she blocked by raising a forearm. The power behind his strike made her grunt. Her feet slid back before she applied chakra to the bottom, sticking her to the floor and making it impossible to move her further. Naruto launched himself off her using the momentum from his kick. He spun around and came in with a Rasengan. Enko's eyes widened, but she still had the sense of mind to leap backward, avoiding the attack, and then throwing an attack of her own in the form of several kunai. Kunai Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 2 kunai became 20 kunai. Naruto ran through a series of hand seals. Futon. Suin Senpuken. Thrusting out both fists, Naruto infused them with wind chakra and sent a massive blast that slammed into the kunai, dispelled them, and continued on. Enko leapt into the air to avoid the attack. Naruto went through more hand seals. Futon. Rinkuden. Naruto's chest swelled as his lungs were filled with wind chakra. He raised a fist and slammed it into his stomach, forcing the air out of his mouth in the form of a bullet. It soared toward Enko, struck her in the chest, and made her body explode. Her mud body. A mud clone. Sanae Jashu. More snakes came from Enko's sleeves as she appeared several meters behind him. She must have replaced herself with that mud clone, and then used a camouflage technique to hide her presence. Turning around, Naruto waved his hand to unleash a blade of wind that sliced into the snakes with ease. However, when all of the snakes burst like overripe fruit and released a thick gas that made him gag, Naruto realized she had been anticipating this. She had wanted him to destroy those snakes. Knowing Enko as he did, Naruto knew that her next attack would come from below. He leapt into the air to avoid her Doden, Moguragakure no Jutsu. When no hands came up from the ground, Naruto frowned. "Where are you looking?" a voice asked. Naruto's eyes widened. It came from above him. Looking up, Naruto realized that Enko had used his knowledge of her own tactics against him. Instead of trying to bury him in the floor, she had leapt into the air and was now coming down from above. He blocked her heel drop. However, doing so caused him to plummet. As wind rushed around him, Naruto turned his head and looked down at the gas still floating in the air. He didn't want to find himself in that again. While it wouldn't kill him, having his lungs choke and burn was not a pleasant feeling. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto created a clone and used it to hurl himself upwards and toward one of the pillars. He landed on it and crouched there, watching Enko as she fell into her own poison. It probably wouldn't hurt her. Enko was immune to all of her poisons. Going through several hand seals, Naruto placed his hands against the pillar. Futon. Suiryoku. Wind blasted from his palms and launched him through the air, sending him hurtling toward Enko, who was looking right at him with a grin on her face. He frowned. Naruto pulled out several shuriken and tossed them at Enko, then went through several hand seals. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 5 shuriken became 25 shuriken. Naruto went through more hand seals. Futon. Rapusho. Wind emitted from his palm and hit the shuriken, not only increasing the speed of their rotation but also increasing the speed they flew. He watched as Enko went through several hand seals and raised a wall from the earth to block them. Since she could no longer see him, Naruto created a shadow clone, replaced himself with it, and then went through several more hand seals. Futon. Kase ni Kakuraru, he whispered. Wind release. Hiding in the wind was a technique that Naruto had created for stealth purposes. Creating a stream of wind that distorted the light around him, Naruto became practically invisible. It had its limitations, of course. For one thing, the technique could be seen through if someone looked directly at him and noticed the distortion. For another, it didn't last very long. However, during quick surprise attacks, when an enemy ninja was focused on something else and not him, it worked like a charm. His clone ran around the wall and engaged Anko in a taijutsu battle. Because a single hit would dispel it, the clone had to be extra cautious. It couldn't even block thanks to that. Anko's kicks were fierce and would cause the clone to break. While the clone was keeping Anko occupied, Naruto snuck up behind her with a sealed tag in his hand. He slapped the seal on Anko. He had to give her credit. She responded the second he touched her, spinning around and nailing him in the face with a heel kick. Naruto's body spun through the air before he hit the ground hard. Ouch, he thought to himself as the clone found itself being dispelled after it was stabbed through the chest with a kunai. XOX. Kakashi stood with Kurenai and Asuma as they watched the battle proceed. He thought Naruto was doing pretty well. Anko was a Tokubetsu Jonin. Contrary to popular belief, Tokubetsu Jonin were not a rank below Jonin. They were Jonin with unique talents or special skills in a specific field that was ranked above Jonin. Anko's was interrogation. However, her skills in combat were still on the rank of an elite Jonin-level ninja. For Naruto to be capable of fighting her on even ground after only 3 years of training is impressive. He's doing a good job of keeping up with Anko, Asuma said, taking a puff of his cigarette and blowing out smoke. He has a pretty good range of jutsu, too. Those wind techniques he's been releasing are subtle and hard to pull off because they require careful chakra manipulation. But that's all he's doing, Kurenai said. If he can't defeat Anko, then does he really deserve to be a Jonin? The battle still isn't over yet, Asuma said. No, Kakashi interrupted, the battle is already won. He had been watching the entire battle from start to finish with his Sharingan, so he'd seen everything that Naruto had done. The way he'd snuck up behind her and placed that seal on her back. Kakashi didn't know what that seal was, but he knew that Jiraiya was a seal master, and the man had to have taught Naruto about seals. If he was using a seal for this battle, then it was probably going to be the game changer. What do you mean? Asked Kurenai. Just watch, Kakashi said. It's about to end. XOX. Ninja battles were generally quite short. A protracted battle between two opponents who were nearly equal rarely ever happened, and while Naruto had experienced a few of those, it was only because their skills had been so even and neither side was willing to give up that those battles lasted as long as they had. In most cases, a battle between ninja lasted for a handful of seconds. This battle lasted about 5 minutes. Kai! Naruto shouted as he created a seal with his hands. Anko, who had been in the process of turning around to confront him, suddenly froze as numerous chains shot from the seal on her back. They encircled her. They tightened around her body. They left her immobile. She struggled to break free, but the more she fought, the tighter the chains became, until at last, she was no longer able to stay standing and fell to the floor with a thump. Damn it! What are these things? Asked Anko. Naruto knelt next to her, pulled out a kunai, and placed it against her neck. This is a seal that I created based on my mother's ability to create chakra chains. When the seal releases, all of the chakra stored inside is converted into chains, which I then use to restrain whoever has the seal attached to them. It can be broken, of course, but it requires you to expel more chakra than I put into the seal. Which is probably impossible for someone who isn't a chakra monster, Anko muttered with a sigh. All right, you got me, brat. You did pretty well. Can you release these chains now? Naruto hesitated. Of course I can, that he wanted to say was on the tip of his tongue, but he knew Anko quite well, and so he knew that she might not let what he'd just done to her go. You're not gonna get back at me for tying you up in chains, are you? He asked. Nah, Anko said. Getting tied up and pulled down by chains is kinda kinky, so I'll let it go this time. Okay then. Naruto made a hand seal. Kai. The chains disappeared, bursting into chakra particles, as Naruto released the jutsu. Anko sat up and stretched her arms out, testing them to make sure she hadn't pulled anything. Naruto held out a hand. Once Anko had confirmed that everything was in working order, she grabbed his hand and let him pull her up. I gotta hand it to you, Naruto, you've really improved a lot, Anko said. Hard to believe you've grown strong enough to beat me in just 3 years. What are you talking, Anko ne-chan? Naruto grinned. I was always this awesome. Whatever you say, brat. Naruto was feeling pretty good about this battle. Sure, Enko hadn't been going full tilt and had totally underestimated him, but that wasn't his problem. She should have realized he wouldn't be a pushover by now. He had trained with Jiraiya of the Sannin, after all. Well done, Naruto. Congratulations. Kakashi walked up, clapping as Asuma and Kurenai followed behind him. You've passed the second test. You've only got one more left. Wait, really? Naruto blinked. But these tests are so easy. That's because we didn't spend much time on the first two, Asuma admitted, blowing smoke from his mouth. We just wanted to see what you were capable of by watching you. You did a good job finding out where the Anbu headquarters was located, Kurenai added. And watching you fight Enko has given us a good estimation of your skills in combat. Now it's time to see if you have what it truly takes to become a Jonin. Naruto straightened his spine. He had no idea what sort of test this would be, but if the others were just to see whether he had the physical and deductive abilities of a Jonin, then it sounded like this last one would determine if he had what it took to actually be a Jonin. In other words, it would test his ability to lead others. I'm ready for whatever you guys throw at me, Naruto said. Kakashi I smiled. I'm glad to hear it. Your next test is going to be leading a group of shinobi on an A-ranked mission. As you know, Jonin are not only the most powerful ninja in our forces, they are also the ones most capable of leading squadrons. That's why talented Jonin eventually go on to take a squad of genin. Jonin who haven't taken on a squad of their own are often given the hardest missions, Kurenai said. A-rank missions are some of the most difficult a ninja can get. Only S-rank missions are harder, but those are rare enough to be practically non-existent. The chances of you getting one of those is slim. Naruto could already see where they were going with this, but he didn't interrupt them. Kakashi, Kurenai, and Asuma seemed excited to finally be explaining something like this. Perhaps this was their first time proctoring the Jonin exams. Naruto didn't know. However, he was loath to not let them have their fun. Beside him, Enko was grinning as though enjoying a show. That is why you're going to take an A-rank mission tomorrow, Asuma said. You'll pick out your squad from a list of Jonin and lead them on this mission. Meanwhile, the three of us will shadow you and watch to see if you're capable of while leading a squadron of elite ninja. I should warn you, if these ninja don't think you're fit to lead them, you'll get left in the dust. Good luck, brat, Enko said, her grin never leaving her face. Thanks, Nei-chan, Naruto said, already trying to imagine what kind of mission he'd be sent on. Assassination. Information gathering deep into enemy territory. Maybe he'd have to protect a VIP like he and Jiraiya had done for Koyuki and Prince Michiru. Whatever mission he was given, Naruto knew one thing for sure. That mission was as good as aced. XOX. Kakashi, Kurenai, and Asuma hadn't been the only people watching the Jonin exams. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shizune were sitting in the Hokage's office, watching Naruto as he navigated his way through the maze to the Anbu headquarters, and then as he fought against Enko. While Tsunade and Shizune looked impressed, Jiraiya felt like smirking. Well, what did I tell you? Said Jiraiya. He's improved a lot, hasn't he? He has, Tsunade agreed. I'm impressed. I knew he would be stronger after he returned from his training, but I didn't expect him to be this capable, Shizune agreed. Enko is one of our better ninja. It's impressive that he can not only fight her on even ground but even defeat her in single combat. If you think this is impressive, wait until you see him fight someone like Kakashi, Jiraiya said. Naruto is a lot stronger than he can showcase in a battle against Enko. Tsunade turned her head to give him a stare, one of her delicate eyebrows raised. Are you telling me that Naruto is even stronger than that without using his hybrid mode? Way stronger. Jiraiya crossed his arms and stared at the television screen. While I still win in most of our spars, Naruto beat me 1 out of every 5 times. It's not just his physical abilities that have improved. His tactics, intuition, jutsu, and knowledge of how to use those jutsu, all of it has improved to the point where it won't be long before he's defeating ninja that would have given us trouble back in our heyday. He and Naruto had spent the last 3 years training. While the first few months had been rocky thanks to the knowledge about Naruto's lineage, which Jiraiya had kept hidden, no longer becoming a secret to Naruto, the rest of their training had been productive. Naruto absorbs knowledge like sponge when he sets his mind to it, Jiraiya continued. I've already taught him all the jutsu I know. He can't use some of them because they don't match his fighting style, but he has enough practical knowledge that he can use them to create his own ninjutsu. Tsunade would have choked on her sake had she been drinking it. Hold on a second, Jiraiya. Are you telling me that Naruto is actually capable of creating his own jutsu? That's not possible, Shizune said in shock. Naruto might be an amazing shinobi, but creating a jutsu is something that even Jonin struggle with. Only a Kage on the same level as Hiruzen Sarutobi could possibly create their own jutsu. What makes you think Naruto isn't that good? Asked Jiraiya, crossing his arms and presenting the two with his best smirk. Naruto might not have the same intellect as Hiruzen, Orochimaru, Kakashi, Minato, or even Shikamaru, but don't underestimate him just because of that. What Naruto lacks in intelligence, he more than makes up for in diligence and creativity. Jiraiya took a moment to let his words sink in. It wasn't surprising that Tsunade was shocked by this news. Creating jutsu took great knowledge of chakra theory and hand seals, which was not something that the average Jonin knew. Kakashi was a genius, but even he had only created a single jutsu without aid. Likewise, Minato had only created the Rasengan. Hiraishin was a reinvention that he took to new heights, not an original technique. Minato Namikaze was a bona fide genius, Jiraiya continued. Naruto doesn't have Minato's knowledge on chakra theory and ninjutsu, but he's pretty inventive. He's even better than Minato was when it comes to fuinjutsu, and his ability to find creative uses for ninjutsu is astounding. Give him a few more years, and I'm pretty sure Naruto will have at least 20, no, 30 original jutsu under his belt. If what you say is true, then Naruto will be an even greater force in a few years, Tsunade said. It looks like my decision to let him take the Jonin exams was a good one. Speaking of, do we know what Naruto's last test is going to be? Asked Shizune. Naruto will be taking an A-rank mission tomorrow. Tsunade leaned back in her seat and crossed her arms. I already have a mission picked out. It's a difficult one, too. That should let us see if his ability to lead is up to par with his ability in combat. Believe me, Naruto is definitely ready, Jiraiya said. I'll never say this to his face, but Naruto is easily my best pupil. That's high praise indeed, Tsunade said. Considering your pupil went on to become Hokage. Yeah, well, Jiraiya shrugged. He couldn't put into words what he felt about Naruto. He just had this feeling that Naruto was going to surpass his father. I believe I understand how you feel, Tsunade said when Jiraiya said nothing. There's something about Naruto that just makes you want to believe in him. Something like that. XOX. Naruto woke up early the next morning, though he technically didn't need to. After taking a quick shower to freshen up, he got dressed for his mission, putting on his black pants, followed by a black sleeveless shirt, which went under a long-sleeved, dark orange shirt. He bandaged his legs with white medical tape, then stuck his feet into his black ninja sandals. After that put on his fingerless gloves, his black haori with an orange Uzumaki spiral on the back, and finally, his magatama. Naruto now had a total of 7 magatamas. He stared at the kama-shaped stones, which hung from a simple necklace. There was no telling how many more of these he had to gather, or if he even needed to gather them at all. Before she had gone silent, Kyubi, Akane, had seemed to know something about these magatama, but she never told him what. I want to know. Naruto wanted to know what it was about these magatama that made him so drawn to them. He wanted to know if this was simply idle curiosity, or something more. After putting the magatama around his neck, Naruto left his apartment and headed for the Hokage Tower, where he would be given an A-rank mission for his Jonin exams. He wondered how this was going to work. Would they at least let him choose his own team, or would the team and everything else be selected for him? Naruto. Stopping in the middle of the street, Naruto turned around as Sakura ran up to him. She was wearing what she had been dressed in yesterday. Naruto waited until she was beside him to begin walking again. Are you heading to the Hokage Tower? Asked Sakura. Yeah, Naruto said. I'm getting an A-rank mission today for my Jonin exams. Sounds tough. You think so? I guess. Anyway, I'm heading to the Hokage's office as well, so I'll walk with you. Sure. Beginning their way to the Hokage's office, Naruto thought about what kind of mission he might get as he conversed with Sakura. It would probably be something that was designed to test his skills in leading. That meant it would be a mission he couldn't solve without teamwork. Granted, most A-rank missions were, but there were a number of them that a Jonin could do on their own. What kind of mission do you think you'll get? Asked Sakura as though she'd been reading his mind. I'm not sure, Naruto admitted. It's not going to be espionage or anything of that nature since there isn't an enemy we need information on. I imagine Tsunade Oba-san will give me a bodyguard mission for a VIP. Those are the most common missions right now. Yeah, there aren't a whole lot of A-ranked missions, are there? Sakura said. No, there aren't. As they kept walking, Naruto looked up when a shadow passed over his head. It was an eagle. Naruto frowned. That wasn't just any eagle. He recognized it as the kind used by Suna to send messages expediently. That was the fastest type of eagle they had, which meant that Suna was sending Tsunade an urgent message for some reason. Has something happened in Suna? Come on, Sakura, Naruto said. I have a feeling something major just happened. Huh, major. Naruto, what are you? Hey. Wait up. As Sakura ran to catch up with him, Naruto raced toward the Hokage's office. He really hoped nothing bad had happened. However, after seeing that eagle, an unsettling feeling had wormed its way into his gut. Nothing seemed out of place when he made it to the Hokage Tower. Kakashi was standing by the entrance, waiting for him while reading his book. He looked up when Naruto and Sakura entered his field of view. Naruto, good to see you're so prompt, Kakashi said. I'm not you, sensei, Naruto retorted. It seems I'm losing respect with my cute pupils, Kakashi murmured before looking at Sakura. Hello, Sakura. Are you also here to see Tsunade? That's right, Sakura said. I've got some reports to file as well, but I needed to ask Tsunade something regarding my studies. Then why don't you come with us? He suggested. That's the plan. Naruto entered the building with Kakashi and Sakura. As they walked down the hall to the mission office, someone rushing from the other side screamed at them to move, forcing them to split apart so the woman could run through. Frowning for a moment as he watched the woman disappear, Naruto ignored the way his gut squirmed and made it to the mission office. Tsunade was already there when they arrived. Sitting at a long table were several Chunin filing mission reports. Iruka was one of those people. Hey, Iruka-sensei. Naruto greeted with a shout. It's been a while, hasn't it? That it has, Naruto, Iruka said. I'm glad to see you're doing well. I hear you're in the middle of your Jonin exams. That's right, Naruto said with a grin. Pretty soon, I'll be ranked higher than you. Iruka, Tsunade began, why don't you find an appropriate A-ranked mission that we can use to test Naruto's growth? Will do, Iruka said as he went to the file of A-ranked missions and began shuffling through them. As this was happening, the door to the mission room burst open and the woman who'd rushed past him, Sakura, and Kakashi ran into the room. She was breathing heavily. Sweat poured down her forehead. Her skin was pale, which Naruto thought was from exhaustion. He soon found out otherwise. We've received an urgent dispatch from Suna. The woman shouted. Tsunade frowned. Let me see it. The woman stumbled over to the table and handed a sheet of paper to Tsunade, who read it over, her frown growing more prominent, brow creasing. Iruka and Shizune looked over Tsunade's shoulder to see the contents. Naruto didn't like the way their eyes widened. No way, Shizune mumbled. It can't be, Iruka said. The feeling inside of Naruto's gut grew even more prominent. Tsunade Oba, Hokage-sama, can I know what the contents of that message are? Has something happened in Suna? It seems, Gaara has been kidnapped by the Akatsuki, Tsunade said. Naruto took in a deep breath to hide his shock. This had always been a possibility. The Akatsuki were after Jinchuriki, which meant Gaara was a target, but his fellow Jinchuriki had seemed so strong that the idea of the Akatsuki beating him in a fight was unfathomable. Well, it would have been if Naruto hadn't already seen their strength. S-ranked ninjas specifically gathered for the purpose of capturing Jinchuriki. Yes, even Gaara couldn't defeat people like that without prior planning. Gaara was strong. Naruto knew this from having sparred with him several times in the past, and when he fought in the desert, Gaara was nearly invisible. However, nearly invincible and completely invincible was a very large gap. There were plenty of weaknesses that Naruto had discovered during their spars. The Akatsuki was made up of S-ranked ninja. They had been specifically selected due to their unique abilities, which aided them in defeating Jinchuriki. What's more, they acted in pairs. A Jinchuriki could possibly defeat a member of the Akatsuki on their own. However, defeating two S-ranked ninja of that caliber at the same time was impossible. So the Akatsuki are finally making their move, Naruto said, clenching his hand into a fist. Suna has officially requested our help, Tsunade added. Naruto, I'm sorry to say it, but your exams are being put on hold until we can deal with this situation. I understand, Naruto said. Also, since we don't have time to gather a team, I'm going to be sending you three, Tsunade continued. Wait, Shizune interrupted. You aren't seriously suggesting we let these three take such a dangerous mission, are you? Never mind an A-ranked mission, this one is easily S-ranked. That may be, but we don't have a choice, Tsunade said. It would take too long to form another team. Given that Akatsuki is made up of S-class missing ninja, the trail could easily grow cold by the time we create another squad that would stand a chance against ninja of this caliber. What's more, Naruto and Kakashi both have experience fighting the Akatsuki. That may be so, but, Shizune trailed off as she perhaps realized that there really was no other choice. All right. Tsunade placed her hands on the desk and fixed them with a stern look, eyes gleaming with determination. As of this moment, you three are Team Naruto. Naruto, you're in charge. Kakashi will be acting as your support. Your mission is to travel to Suna and find out anything you can, aid them in any way you can, and follow their orders. Give them whatever backup you can. Naruto slammed his fists into each other and gave Tsunade a confident grin. You can count on us. We'll travel to Suna and do everything we can to help rescue Gaara. Count on it. Naruto paused as an idea came to him. Oh, would you mind if I requested someone else to join us on this mission? Who did you have in mind? Asked Tsunade. Naruto didn't say anything. He just grinned. Chapter 51. Mission to the Sand. Naruto's first stop was not the gates of Konoha. It was the Higurashi weapons shop. Tenten was there when he arrived, standing behind the counter, a bored look on her face. Naruto went right up to her. She noticed him and looked up, wearing a smile, though her bright expression soon shifted into a frown. What's wrong, Naruto? I need you to come with me on a mission. You up for it? What kind of mission? The S-class kind. Tenten paused, studied him further, and then said, let me grab my scrolls. Naruto didn't say anything as Tenten hopped over the counter, rushed up the stairs, and came back several moments later with a large scroll strapped across her back. Naruto didn't ask questions. He told Tenten to follow him, Kakashi, and Sakura before leaving the shop and traveling toward the south gate. While they were heading to the gate, Naruto gave Tenten the lowdown. He told her that the cage had been kidnapped by the Akatsuki, how their job was to travel to Suna, get as much information as they could, and help Suna with whatever they needed. He made his explanation as short as possible since they were running low on time. This sounds like a tough mission, Tenten said. We're up against an S-class ninja, Sakura said. Tough is understating things a little. I'm sure we'll be all right, Kakashi said, except he wasn't reading his book, which meant even he understood the gravity of this mission. At the front of the gate stood Jiraiya. The S-class, cage-level ninja had his arms crossed and a scroll on his back. He looked like he was going somewhere, and knowing him, Naruto understood that Jiraiya was probably leaving to gather information on Akatsuki. Ero Sennin, Naruto greeted the man, whose lion's mane of white hair rustling in the breeze. He wore his usual outfit and Geta sandals. However, the expression on his face was not one that Naruto was used to seeing. I'm not going to stop you from going on this mission, Jiraiya said. You're ready for this. It's what I've trained you for. However, I'm going to tell you to be careful. We still don't know which members of Akatsuki kidnapped the cage. For all we know, they could be the worst matchup for you, so be sure to stay on your toes and don't underestimate them. You don't have to worry about that, sensei, Naruto said. I'm not alone on this mission. Jiraiya looked at Kakashi, Tenten, and Sakura. While Kakashi was dressed for an A-class mission, with a ninja pouch that was filled with ninja weapons like shuriken, kunai, and ninja wire, Sakura was only wearing her medical pouch. That said, she was a medical ninja, so the medical pouch at her side was all she really needed. I suppose that's true. Still, be careful. I will. Jiraiya placed his hands on Naruto's shoulder and gave him a confident smile. You've grown a lot stronger. Go out there and do what you have to. Will do. Removing his hands, Jiraiya walked up to Kakashi. Meanwhile, Tsunade and Iruka walked up to the gate from the direction of the Hokage Tower. Neither of them said anything. Naruto assumed they had merely come to see them off. This mission would be dangerous. S-class missions were given that designation because the chances of death were practically guaranteed. The S stood for suicidal, as in, you probably had a death wish for taking them. It was the same with ninja rankings. S-ranked ninja were S-ranked because anyone else who wasn't also considered S-ranked had to be suicidal to go up against them. Akatsuki was a group made up of only S-ranked ninja. Any mission involving them was automatically bumped up to S-class. Of course, considering they were going to face at least 2 S-ranked ninja, this mission was even more dangerous than a regular S-class, but there was no designation above S. I'm leaving Naruto in your hands, Kakashi, Jiraiya said. Naruto's ears twitched. He's gotten a lot stronger, but he's still rough around the edges. He doesn't have the same experience that you do, so I want you to help him grow any way you can. Kakashi eyes smiled at Jiraiya. Don't worry. I'll do everything in my power to help out. Good. I'm counting on you. Sakura, Tsunade said, getting the pinkhead's attention. Take care of yourself on this mission. I've trained you well, but S-ranked ninja are not people that you can underestimate. I know, Tsunade-sama. Sakura smiled as she tightened her gloves. I'm not going to underestimate anyone. Besides, I've got Naruto and Kakashi-sensei with me. You know, I somehow feel like I've been forgotten, Tenten muttered. I didn't forget you, Naruto said. Tenten smiled at him. Thanks. Are you two ready? Naruto called out to Kakashi and Sakura. We need to get going. The longer we stay here, the more likely we'll be unable to rescue Gaara. We're coming, Sakura said, running over to Naruto and Tenten. Kakashi traveled at a more sedate pace, but even he had a sense of hurriedness to him. All right, Naruto began, let's go. Make sure you keep up. We're running hard. Naruto didn't wait for them to respond before he took off at a swift run, forcing the others to run with him. Suna was at least 10 days away if they walked. It was 546 kilometers away. He wanted to make it in only 2, which meant they needed to move at a hellacious pace of at least 75 kilometers per hour. Kakashi, Sakura, and Tenten were able to keep up with him at the pace he set, though that wasn't so surprising. Kakashi was an elite Jonin, Sakura had been trained by Tsunade, and Tenten was on the same team as Maeda Guy and Rock Lee. They kept moving. As they closed the distance between Konoha and Suna, trees passing by them in a blur, Naruto saw someone coming up in the distance, walking at a sedate pace. He recognized them by their 4 ponytails. Temari. As she stopped walking, Temari turned her head just as Naruto and the others stopped in front of her. Her lips twitched as though about to smile. She stopped about halfway. The lips moved into a frown. Naruto? She asked, looking at the others before focusing on him again. What are you doing here? I'm guessing you haven't heard yet, Naruto began. Gaara has been kidnapped by the Akatsuki. What? Naruto could understand Temari's shock, but more than shock, his friend's pale face showed a clear sign of worry and fear. That, too, was understandable. We're heading to Suna now, Naruto said. Come with us. Temari didn't say anything, though she did signify that she would be coming with them, and they set off once again at their ridiculous pace. They ran and ran and ran, and they didn't stop running until night had fallen and the stars came out. Even then Naruto wanted to run more. However, he also understood that they couldn't. It was important that they be well rested upon arriving in Suna. We'll camp out here for the night, Naruto said, choosing a clearing that was a little ways off from the main road to Suna. I'll prepare a fire, Sakura said. I'll catch some food, Tenten offered before wandering off. In that case, I'll secure the perimeter, Kakashi said. As the 3 wandered into the forest to gather what they needed or make sure they were safe, Naruto and Temari stood together in the clearing. The silence was stifling. Naruto wanted to say something to reassure Temari, but really, there wasn't anything that he could say. Her brother had been kidnapped. No one knew what the Akatsuki would do with Gaara, but considering they were after the Biju inside of his stomach, it couldn't be anything good. Naruto, Temari said softly, what's going to happen to my brother? I won't tell you not to worry, Naruto said. Fuck, I'm worried, but Temari, He placed a hand on her shoulder. I'm going to do everything within my power to save Gaara. You can count on it. Temari looked at Naruto, eyes white and glossy as though filled with tears that she refused to let spill out. Naruto didn't know how well he did, but he tried to infuse confidence into his stare, tried to tell her that he would rescue Gaara no matter the cost with just his eyes. Temari might not have understood. However, she clearly saw something. Naruto. She walked into his chest. Naruto wrapped his arms around her in a comforting hug. Right now, this was all that he could do for her. XOX. Catching food was a simple matter for Tenten. With her skills at throwing weapons, all she needed to do was wait around for an animal, fish or rabbit, and then toss a kunai at them. Whenever she was on a mission with Team Guy, she was always the one who caught the food. Tenten narrowed her eyes as she stood next to the river, watching, waiting. Her eyes narrowed as she stared at the flowing waters. 1, 2, 3. A fish suddenly sprang up from the surface. Tenten tossed a kunai, which struck the fish, continued on, and hit a tree, pinning the fish to the tree. She did this 6 more times. This should be enough. Stringing the fish up with some ninja wire, Tenten slung the fish over her shoulder and made her way back to the camping ground. She stopped upon noticing Naruto and Temari embracing. Heart racing, Tenten hid behind a tree. She pressed her back against the bark, squeezed her eyes shut, and prayed that what she had seen was just an illusion. Tenten opened her eyes and peeked out from behind the tree again. She went back to hiding. Nope, it wasn't an illusion. Naruto and Temari were definitely embracing. She looked back out from behind the tree, at Naruto and Temari as they stood in each other's arms, holding one another as though their lives depended on it. As she stared at them, her mind raced with questions. When had these two gotten so close? Were they seeing each other? How could this have happened? As she continued staring at Naruto and Temari, footsteps appeared behind her. Tenten, Sakura said, I've got the firewood, so we can start cooking those. Sakura couldn't say anything more as Tenten clamped a hand over her mouth and pulled her behind the tree. She pressed the other girls back against the trunk, looked out from behind the tree again to make sure Naruto and Temari hadn't seen them, and then went back to Sakura. Be quiet, she shushed the girl, who had begun to squirm. Sakura quieted down and pulled Tenten's hand off her mouth. What's going on? Temari and Naruto are holding each other, Tenten whispered. She looked back at Naruto and Temari. They were still embracing. How long were they planning to do that? When did they get so close? What is going on here? Sakura hesitated before, in a hesitant voice, saying, You mean you don't know? Know what? Asked Tenten. Sakura sighed before explaining what she had seen 2 mornings ago at Naruto's apartment. Tenten felt like an anvil had been dropped onto her chest. XOX. Tenten had been abnormally quiet for the entire night. During dinner, when everyone went to bed, and even that morning, she never said a single word to Naruto. That said, she did talk to Sakura and Kakashi. It seemed the only people she wouldn't talk to was him and Temari. Naruto would have asked her about whatever was bothering her, but they didn't have time. Gaara was waiting. After a breakfast of grilled rabbit, Naruto once more set them off at a grueling pace that had Sakura huffing and puffing after 5 hours of travel. Naruto, slow down. I'm sorry, Sakura, but we can't slow down. They weren't running this time. Naruto, Kakashi, Tenten, Temari, and Sakura leapt through the trees, moving more swiftly this way than they ever could by running. Naruto led them from the front, Kakashi and Temari on either side, while Tenten and Sakura took up the rear. Sakura was trailing behind all of them. She might have had Tsunade's strength, but that didn't mean she had the same endurance as the others. Her focus had been medicine and healing, not long-distance travel. But, if we keep going like this, then surely. You don't get it, Sakura, Naruto interrupted. Gaara's been taken by those Akatsuki assholes. If we don't get there soon, there's no telling what they'll do to him. They're after the Shukaku that's been sealed inside of him, just like they're after me for the Kyuubi. You know that, don't you? That Gaara and I are both Jinchuriki. Sakura looked away, head turning down, eyes narrowing. In sorrow. So she did know. Naruto wasn't surprised. As Tsunade's apprentice, it was obvious to him that she would have told Sakura about this at some point. It made even more sense because she was his teammate. She couldn't afford not to know, and it was better to tell her now when they still could, then let the information come out when Akatsuki began going after them. No more words were spoken as they traveled through the trees. Hours later, the trees cleared before them as their eyes were met with a vast desert, a desert that was in the middle of a sandstorm. Damn it! Naruto swore, unable to quite contain his anger. He took a deep breath, sighed, and then went over to the nearest tree at the edge of the desert, crossed his arms, and leaned against it. You all might as well sit down. There's not much we can do with this sandstorm. We'll have to wait until it clears. Sandstorms are incredibly dangerous, Tamari agreed as she walked over to the same tree. Even we sand ninja don't wander through the desert when a sandstorm is brewing. I've heard of travelers dying out in the desert after trying to brave one. They cause people to lose their sense of direction, and some sandstorms have winds that are strong enough to flay the flesh from your bones. Kakashi, Sakura, and Tenten looked at each other, and then slowly wandered over to Naruto and Tamari. It did not escape Naruto's notice that Tenten stood as far from him and Tamari as soon as possible. The storm did not let up for the entire day. That meant they had lost a full 24 hours in reaching Suna. Naruto would have lamented this if they had time for lamentations, but as things stood, time was something they were in severe lack of. It took a full 2 days to travel from Edge of Fire Country to Suna, not because of the distance but because they couldn't travel as quickly through the desert. The arid landscape and heat made fast travel impossible. Hydration was the key to traveling through the desert, which meant they had to take breaks to rehydrate, and of course, the desert stretched out for enough kilometers that there was no way they could have traversed it in a single day. When they arrived at Suna, the bowl-shaped walls of the village rose in the distance. They moved closer and the details of the village walls were revealed. The walls greatly reminded Naruto of large stairs. A gap soon became visible through one part of those stair-like walls, the entrance to Suna. 2 people were standing in front of the entrance. Shinobi dressed in Suna's traditional ninja garb. The pair looked in their direction as they appeared on the horizon. We've been waiting for you, the one on the left said before noticing Tamari as part of the group. Lady Tamari, I hadn't realized you were coming with them. We met on the way here, Tamari said. What's the situation? Follow me, one of them said. The 2 ninja rushed off into Suna, and they had no choice other than to follow them. Along the way, one of the shinobi told them something shocking. What? Tamari almost screamed. They got Kankuro, too. Yes, when the enemy took the cage, Kankuro went after them himself. He was poisoned. We've done everything we can, but we haven't been able to find a cure for him. The situation was looking grimmer by the second. Gaara was kidnapped. Kankuro was poisoned. Naruto could scarcely imagine what kind of terrifying situations would crop up next. It seemed as if each second caused more problems to escalate the already tenuous situation. Naruto's feet tapped against the white tiles as they ran through the hospital on their way to see Kankuro, who was in critical condition. As they entered the room, he looked around. It was mostly empty, but there was a large bed in the center. And several people were standing around the bed. He didn't recognize any of them. There was a man with only one eye visible, the other covered with a cloth that hung down his face, an old woman, and an old man. Kankuro! Tamari shouted as she rushed into the room. Sakura rushed ahead of him and Kakashi. Tenten hung back. As they all entered, the old woman looked up and at them, her eyes suddenly widening as though she had seen a ghost. It's you. Rage echoed from her voice as she rushed toward them in a burst of speed. White Fang of Konoha. Prepare to die. Naruto was shocked, but not shocked enough that he couldn't respond. He rushed ahead of Kakashi and met the woman head-on. He blocked her fist, catching it in the palm of his hand, withholding his wince as he realized that this hag was stronger than she looked. The old woman tried to kick him when she realized her punch had failed, but Naruto let go of her hand and leapt back. This hag might be old, but she's pretty good. Who the hell is she? Hey, who the hell do you think you are, Granny? Asked Naruto. He was ignored. White Fang of Konoha. The woman shouted as she pointed at Kakashi. Do not think I have forgotten what you did to my son. I shall finally take my revenge on you. A tense atmosphere hung in the air as Naruto, wondering what this hag's malfunction was, glared at her, while the old woman herself glared at Kakashi. This moment probably would have continued for some time. Fortunately, the old man stepped in front of the old woman and held up a hand. Hold on, Chiho, the old man said. Take a closer look at him. It's true that there is a resemblance, but this man is clearly not the White Fang. Besides, as you know, the White Fang died a long time ago. Remember, when you heard the news, you wept in frustration because it meant you could no longer have your vengeance. As the old man spoke, the old lady, Chiho, stared at Kakashi, who wore a nervous expression as he waved at the woman. As the tension rose, reaching a peak, Chiho's expression finally cleared. Oh, well, never mind. Ah ha 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 ha. As Chiho laughed, Naruto could do nothing but gawk at her. Kakashi, on the other hand, looked like someone had slapped him in the face with a dead fish. Even the others looked like they didn't know how to respond. What the hell was this woman laughing about? Had she gone senile? The moment was interrupted when Kankuro gasped and started grabbing at his throat. Sakura was the first to respond, moving over to the table as she tied her hair back into a ponytail. She looked at Kankuro. Then she looked at the others. Let me take a look at him, she said. Also, it might help if you all clear out of the room. You've got it, Sakura, Naruto said. He turned around and began heading back outside. Kakashi and Tenten followed him. After a few moments of hesitation, Chiho and the old man also followed him. Tamari did not follow for several minutes, but when the man with half his face hidden by a cloth placed a hand on her shoulder, she took the hint and moved back outside. Naruto sat on the bench along with Chiho and the old man. While Kakashi and Tenten remained standing, Tamari sat right next to him, close enough that their thighs were touching. Without even looking away from the door, which remained open to let them see what Sakura was doing, her hand sought out his and grabbed it in a fierce grip. Naruto squeezed back. Inside of the medical room, Sakura was checking over Kankuro, peeling his eyelids back and flashing light into his pupils, opening his mouth and sticking her fingers in to get saliva samples. She also checked his pulse and heartbeat. Naruto had no idea what she was doing. He wasn't a medical ninja. However, her every move was done with a professionalism that Naruto would never have thought Sakura capable of. We're dealing with a metal-based toxin, Sakura said at last. The kind that attacks muscle tissue, destroying the cell's integrity. The two medical ninja from Suna, who were still in the chamber with her, looked shocked. You got all that? From just one look. Sakura nodded. May I see his medical charts? Of course, one of them said, grabbing the charts and handing them off to her. Here it is. We were getting a breakdown of the poison, but there are still quite a few blanks. Sakura looked at the chart, talking all the while as though speaking to herself. I already know what's going to happen. His carotid artery will collapse, causing the entire heart to cease functioning. Given how insidious this poison is, it's doubtful we'll be able to create an antidote in time. What? Tamari shouted, standing up. Are you saying there's nothing we can do? Sakura turned her head to look at her, and then she looked at the two medical ninja. There might be a way to save him. I'm gonna need a few things. This method will be crude, but it's really the only one I can think of that might work. Watching from a distance, Naruto had no idea what her plan was, but as the two medical ninja from Suna ran off and came back with several bowls filled with something, he knew there was nothing he could do and closed his eyes. He would use this chance to rest. Tamari, Sakura called. Come in here. I'll need yours and Baki's help in holding Kankuro down. This next part is going to be difficult for Kankuro. Got it. Tamari let go of his hand and walked into the room with the man whose face was half covered in cloth. Naruto closed his eyes again, though not before noticing that Tenten was staring at him. He didn't open his eyes. However, he did say, something wrong, Tenten. You and Tamari, she began before hesitating. No, never mind. Naruto sighed as he wondered if perhaps Tenten wanted to ask about his relationship with Tamari. Anyone would be curious, but then, she shouldn't have an inkling about their relationship, and it wasn't like he and Tamari were dating or engaged. At most, they were sex partners. They provided each other comfort and a warm body at night. That was all Naruto could offer. Time slipped by. Naruto didn't know how much of it passed because he was asleep, but he came to when Sakura suddenly announced that she was finished. He opened his eyes with a slight start, looked around, and then stood up and walked into the room. Tamari had slid down against the wall, her feet splayed out as she took several deep breaths, sweat beading her forehead. The relief on her face could not be masked. Naruto shifted his gaze to Kankuro, who no longer looked like he was suffering, and then he looked at Sakura, whose composed expression impressed him. It seems I'm not the only one who grew up. You remind me of the old slug princess, Chiho suddenly said to Sakura. Naruto had no idea when she had snuck up on them, but he didn't pay much attention. Well, I am her apprentice, Sakura admitted. And it was by her orders that I come here. The old lady said nothing. It was the old man, who Naruto could only assume was her brother, who spoke. It seems that time has passed us by. Everything that we once knew and took as fact are being flipped on its head. Perhaps it's a sign that our generation truly has ended and made way for a new one. Once again, the old lady said nothing. XOX. It was nearly half an hour after Sakura had saved Kankuro's life, though that didn't mean the danger had passed, or that their tasks were done. While Sakura gave instructions to the medical ninja, Naruto, Kakashi, and Tenten stood with Baki outside of the room. We can't thank you enough for saving Kankuro, Baki said. Think nothing of it, Kakashi replied. We're allies, so it's only natural that we would do everything in our power to help. Besides, Naruto added, Kankuro and Gaara are friends. There's no way I'd let them die if there was something I could do. Anyway, could you tell us more about the current situation? Of course. Baki shifted his attention from Kakashi to Naruto. After the Akatsuki kidnapped Gaara, Kankuro tried to go after them by himself. You can see the results. We also sent a pursuit squad after them, but we have yet to hear back. I assume they are dead. Also, there is another problem. Captain Yura, one of our advisors on the council, has gone missing. We don't know whether he is dead or alive. Naruto placed a hand against his face, pressing his palm into his left eye as he slowly went over what Baki had said. He looked back into the room. Sakura was still talking to the medical ninja. Chiho was watching her. Meanwhile, Temari was still with her brother, holding his hand as she did everything she could to support him. So, basically, we have no leads as to where they might have gone. Naruto didn't want to bring attention to Suna's failure, especially since it wouldn't help. The Akatsuki were troublesome foes that even Jiraiya had trouble finding information on. It was stupid to expect Suna to be capable of tracking them, but it also didn't change how their case cage had been kidnapped and they failed to track them. Yes. Baki looked down. We've failed to follow them. Lord Baki. Naruto, Kakashi, Tenten, and Baki turned to the medical ninja who had called out to him. The man gestured toward the medical table. Kankuro was still lying on it. Kankuro has regained consciousness. Everyone came up to the table, which looked more like a bed, though they kept their distance to give Kankuro breathing room. The young man looked a lot different without his makeup. Naruto thought he might actually be able to get a girl if he stopped wearing makeup. Of course, right then there were bags under his eyes, his skin was pasty and pale, and he looked like a man who had barely avoided death. Kankuro, Temari said, are you all right? Kankuro's eyes wandered around for a moment before fixing on his sister. Temari, you're back already. I heard the village was in trouble. I'm sorry to be such a bother. Don't be ridiculous. You're not a bother at all. Kakashi, Naruto said. Right. Kakashi looked at Baki. Do you think someone can take me to the site where Kankuro battled against Akatsuki? When Baki gave him a bemused look, he said, I'm known for having a pretty good nose. If there's even a small trace of their scent, I can track their location. There's no need for that, Kankuro murmured. He grunted and groaned, his muscles straining as he slowly pushed himself into a sitting position. Where are my puppets? I assume that my puppets were recovered, right? We did recover them, Baki said. He looked at one of the medical ninja, who got the hint, rushed out of the room, and came back minutes later with the remains of Kankuro's puppets. He laid them on a blue sheet beside the bed. One of them fought with me, while the other carried Gaara away, Kankuro said. You might be able to follow Gaara's scent, but you can definitely track the one I fought. I made sure of it. You see, I've got his scent right here. Kankuro raised a hand and twitched his fingers. The closed hand of his puppet suddenly opened, revealing a piece of cloth. The last thing I did before falling unconscious was make sure I had a scrap of his clothing. You went up against an S-rank ninja and not only survived but made sure you had something that could be used to track him. Naruto said as Kakashi knelt beside the puppet and grabbed the cloth. That's exactly what I'd expect from a Suna shinobi. You guys are tenacious. Hey, Kankuro chuckled. That's quite the praise coming from a stubborn bastard like you, URK. Kankuro. Temari cried out. Are you okay? I'm fine, Tamari. Kankuro grimaced as he held a hand to his chest, as though the phantom pains from the poison was getting to him. He looked around, blinking several times, eyes glassy, before they landed on Naruto. Is that you, Naruto? Hey, makeup man, Naruto greeted him with a friendly smile. You look like shit. I can see why you wear makeup now. Hey, still the Joker, I see, Kankuro said, too tired to argue back. Kakashi went through several hand seals as Naruto spoke, and then slammed his hands into the ground and shouted, Kuchio's no Jutsu. Seals appeared along the ground before smoke exploded everywhere. When it cleared, there were 8 dogs ranging in size, shape, and breed, standing together. Hey, Kakashi, a small pug sitting on the head of a large, black-furred bulldog. The 8 ninja dogs are here to assist you. Kakashi knelt before the dogs and held out his hand, palm up, with the small cloth that Kankuro had snagged from his opponent resting on his palm. I need you to memorize this scent and find out where the person it belongs to went. The 8 dogs sniffed at the cloth, the sound of their actions echoing through the room, which had grown abnormally quiet at the dog's summoning. When they finished, the pug, Pakun, hopped off the bulldog's head. Don't worry, Kakashi, he said. We'll let you know when we find that scent. The dogs rushed out of the room and disappeared down the hall. Naruto looked at the door for a second, then looked at everyone in the room. Sakura was no longer there, having gone off with one of the medical ninja to the place where medicinal plants were being kept. She was trying to brew up an antidote for the poison. However, Tenten and Kakashi were with him. Tenten, I'd like you to prepare our supplies for when Pakun and the other dogs pick up the scent, Naruto said. Since we're going up against S-ranked ninja, we'll need to be prepared, but none of us outside of you have the necessary equipment to deal with them. You got it, Tenten said, nodding before she left the hospital room. Naruto sighed as she vanished. Something had come between them, but if nothing else, she at least was willing to follow his orders. As Tenten left, the 2 old people walked up to Kankuro's bedside. Both of them had not said anything for a while now. Kankuro, the old woman, Chiho, said. Chiho-sama, Ebizo-sama. Kankuro looked at them like he'd been smacked in the face. He seemed surprised to see these 2. You 2 are here, too. There's something we must know, and only you can tell us, Chiho said. Am I correct in thinking that one of your opponents, the one you fought, was Sasori? The question shook Kankuro, whose lips thinned as he looked down, as though trying to hide a shameful secret. Well, speak up, Kankuro, the old man, Ebizo, said. Yes, it was Sasori of the Red Sand, Kankuro said at last, sighing as he relinquished information that he must have been reluctant to part with. He told me so himself. At this declaration, Chiho looked at the remains of Kankuro's puppet, lying still on the blue sheet. It was literally in pieces, as though something had ripped it apart, or maybe broke it apart. Naruto looked at where Chiho was looking. There, on the back of the puppet's neck, was a red scorpion symbol. Sasori of the Red Sand, huh? Kakashi murmured, staring not at the puppet but at Chiho. From the look on your face, I'd say you know something about the person we're up against. Will you tell us? Chiho seemed reluctant to say anything. Naruto was tempted to push her for information, but at that moment, Sakura came in with the antidote, which she gave to Kankuro. It was a drink of some kind. Even after taking it, he didn't look much better. It would probably take time for the antidote to work. You should be feeling better by tomorrow, Sakura said. Make sure you get lots of rest, though. Your body needs to recover as well. Speaking of rest, we've prepared rooms for all of you, Baki said. Thank you, Naruto said. I'd love to head off right now, but it'll be a while before Pakun and the others pick up the scent, and as much as I hate to admit it, we'll need to be well rested if we plan on going up against the Akatsuki. Naruto, Kankuro said suddenly, just as a ninja was about to show them to the hotel they would be staying at. Please, save my little brother. While Ebizo and Chiho seemed surprised by Kankuro asking him to save Gaara, Naruto merely gave the puppet master a grin. Don't worry. I'm gonna do everything in my power to save him. After all, Gaara is one of my friends. The hotel that Naruto, Kakashi, Sakura, and Tenten were shown to look the same as every other dwelling. It was large and shaped kind of like a beehive. An oval building with rounded edges. The inside was like every other hotel he'd been in. They were given 2 rooms, one for him and Kakashi, and the other for Sakura and Tenten. When they entered their hotel, Naruto looked around at the standard furniture of the 2-bedroom. There were couches, a table and chairs, and a large nightstand. It didn't have anything else. That was okay because he didn't need much else. Naruto took off his ninja pouch and set it on the table, and then divested himself of his shirt and pants. Already getting comfortable, are we? Asked Kakashi. Unlike Naruto, he was sitting on the bed, still fully dressed except for his headband. He had his Sharingan eye closed as he leaned against the headboard, slowly flipping through the pages of his new Makeout Tactics book. Already reading porn, are we? Naruto shot back. Touché, Kakashi replied absently as he flipped another page. Naruto sat down on his bed, crossed his legs, and adopted a meditative state. Once more he tried to enter the seal where Akane was being held. Nothing happened. No matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't get through. It was like something was blocking his path. Something wrong? Asked Kakashi. Just problems with my inner furry, Naruto spoke with a sigh. I see. In the quiet that settled over them, Naruto could do nothing more than wonder why Akane wasn't talking to him anymore. The moonlight shone through a window on his left. XOX. Naruto and the others woke up early the next morning. Pakun was already waiting for them in front of the hotel when the 4 of them exited. Everyone was already dressed and ready to head out on a moment's notice, and they now had more supplies and ninja tools thanks to Tenten, so it was fortuitous that Pakun was already there. Kakashi, I found the Akatsuki's secret base, Pakun said, lifting a paw. Really? Kakashi pulled a map from his pouch, unrolled it, and set it on the ground in front of Pakun. Then he knelt down. Where would they be on this map? Pakun studied the map for several seconds before pointing at one particular spot. The map was topographical, so it showed shifts in elevation. The spot indicated showed that they were hiding in a canyon that had a river in it. There was a lot of brown with a blue line running through it. All right, Kakashi said, standing back up. He rolled up the scroll and placed it in his pouch. Thanks for the help, Pakun. Can I ask you for one more favor? Please keep an eye on the place where Akatsuki are hiding. I'd like to know if they change locations again. Will do, Pakun said. I'll see you guys later. As Pakun ran off, no doubt heading for the exit to Suna, Tenten adjusted her scroll. Since they found out where Akatsuki is hiding Gaara, I guess that means we can leave. We will in just a moment, Naruto said. But we have to wait for a second. We're not going on this mission alone. A group of Suna ninja are coming with us. Naruto created a shadow clone and sent it off. The clone's job was to inform Temari that the location of her brother had been found, so she could put together a team that would be going with them. If he knew Temari as well as he thought he did, then he knew that she would want to rescue Gaara herself. It was a 15-minute wait before Temari and 4 other ninja appeared before them, though Naruto had known they were coming when his clone dispelled. He didn't know 3 of them, a guy wearing sunglasses, a woman with purple triangles painted on her cheek, and another man with gray hair and thick sideburns, but he knew the young girl with them. Naruto couldn't remember her name. However, he was sure she was Gaara's old genin student. Sorry it took so long, Temari said. We're all ready to go. All right then, Naruto began. Let's head off. Hold it, Baki said as he dropped from a roof and landed next to them. Standing up from his crouched position, he looked at Temari and the Suna ninja with her. I'm sorry, Temari, but you and your squad need to remain here. Patrol the perimeter. What? You can't be serious. Temari shouted. These are orders from above, Baki said, causing Temari to look like she'd swallowed her tongue. If word gets out that the case cage is missing, our enemies may use this as an opportunity to launch an attack on the village. Are you kidding me? Temari asked, though it was apparently a rhetorical question as she began a tirade seconds later. These Konoha ninja have come all the way here just to rescue our case cage, but you're telling me that we can't. What sort of asinine reason could there be for not letting Suna ninja rescue their own case cage? Baki looked away. I'm sorry. Naruto did not know what was happening. That said, he had a theory, one that he didn't like. Gaara was a Jinchuriki, a person who'd had a tailed beast sealed into them at birth, a weapon that the village was supposed to point at their enemies, and a deterrent when he wasn't necessary. It wouldn't surprise him if many on the council still thought this way. They were the ones who had made him. It also wouldn't surprise Naruto if these people had decided that this, using the Akatsuki as a convenient excuse to get rid of him, was an acceptable means of ridding themselves of a nuisance. He did not voice these thoughts. Not only was it just a theory. Giving voice to them would only hurt Temari. Well, I'm going. A voice shouted from above. Everyone looked up. Standing high on the building's roof was the old woman from before, Chiho, a former ninja and now retired old hag. If Asuna shinobi is needed, then I'll be the one to go, she declared with a confidence that belied her age. Granny Chiho, Temari uttered. Baki gawked. But you're so. I'm retired, yes. Chiho smiled. It was a carnivorous smile, filled a mischiefness that Naruto would not have expected to see on a woman this age. Which means, of course, that I am free to do whatever I want. Yes, but, the journey will be difficult, the woman with triangle patches on her cheek said. Bah, don't treat me like a fossil. Chiho exclaimed before crouching down and leaping off the building. Naruto's eyes almost popped from their sockets as the woman fell head first toward the ground. At the very last second, she flipped around, landed on her feet, and bent her knees to absorb the shock of impact. Her face now lifted into a full-fledged grin. Chiho looked at them. After all, it's been a long time since I've had the chance to dote on my grandchild, she said, signifying an end to this conversation. Old ladies. They were some of the most stubborn people on the planet. XOX. Standing at the entrance to Suna, Naruto and his party, now with Chiho, looked at Temari, Baki, and several other Suna ninja. I'll try to convince the council to overrule their decision, Baki said to them, though Naruto knew it was an empty promise, if his thoughts on the council were correct. We'll catch up with you when we can, Temari added. Naruto grinned. Hey, by the time you catch up, I'll have already rescued Gaara. I'll hold you to that, Temari told him. Count on me. There was little time to waste, so their goodbyes were brief. With Naruto leading the pack, the group now consisting of 4 ninja and 1 retiree journeyed through the desert. According to Kakashi's ninja dog, Pakun, Gaara was located several dozen kilometers outside of the desert, closer to the Land of Fire. The location was in a small canyon containing a river and surrounded by dense foliage. Crossing the desert took exactly 1 day. They were fortunate to not have run headfirst into a sandstorm, which allowed them to make great headway. Naruto drove them hard, too. He kept them going, claiming that so long as daylight was still on them, they could continue to move. As they leapt through the trees, Tenten finally gained the courage to speak. Hey, Naruto. Yeah, how long has the Akatsuki been after you? I'm not sure. Naruto landed on a branch, Tenten seconds after him, and both leapt off at nearly the same time. The Akatsuki attacked me 3 years ago, you remember. But they must have formed long before that. Unfortunately, there's no way of knowing how long they've been around, or how long they've been after the Jinchuriki like myself and Gaara. Even Eros Sennin's spy network has only managed to get a little information about them. What worries me is that it's been 3 years since the Akatsuki have come after Naruto, Kakashi said, jumping off a branch. Sakura and Chiho followed behind him. They've been gone for 3 years. What were they doing in that time? They must have spent all that time planning on how to capture Naruto and the other Jinchuriki. They might have been doing that, but I think there is another reason, Chiho said, landing on a rock jutting from a small stream. She leapt off it. Everyone looked at her. What reason would that be? Asked Sakura. Hopping off a tree branch, Chiho stared ahead with a resolute yet resigned expression. If you are going to draw out a tailed beast, then a lot of preparation is involved. It's not something you can just do on a whim, unless you're an Uzumaki or perhaps an Uchiha. Which means they are after not just Gaara and me, but the others as well. Naruto concluded in a questioning tone. Probably, Chiho agreed. Tailed beasts. Tenten frowned. What are you two talking about? Asked Sakura. Naruto sighed. Gaara and I aren't the only ones with a tailed beast sealed inside of us. There are 9 tailed beasts in total, and each one has a different number of tails. There's Shukaku, which Gaara has, and then the Kyuubi, which is sealed inside of me. Between those are the Nibi, Senbi, Yonbi, Gobi, Rokubi, Nanabi, and Hachibi. They are the 9-tailed beasts. It occurred to Naruto that if Akatsuki was after all of the tailed beasts, then Yugito was also in danger. When this mission was over, he would need to speak with her and let her know what was happening. It was getting to the point where it was no longer safe for a Jinchuriki to travel alone. You know a lot about the tailed beasts, Kakashi said. Of course I do. Not only am I a Jinchuriki, I also know several other Jinchuriki aside from myself and Gaara. The group kept moving. Naruto hopped from tree branch to tree branch. The others followed. All of the trees looked more or less the same, but Kakashi knew where they were headed and how to get there, so Naruto had him take the lead. They kept an eye out for traps. During the three great ninja wars, the tailed beasts were highly sought after, Chiho continued as if talking to herself. Tailed beasts are creatures whose flesh and body is composed entirely of highly concentrated chakra. During the Great Wars, the many hidden villages zealously fought over the tailed beasts and used them as weapons of war. However, a tailed beast is not something that you can just control. That is how Jinchuriki came to be created. They were made to become weapons of war, or deterrents during times of peace. You're only half right, Granny, Naruto said as he stared at Kakashi, following the man tenaciously. The first Jinchuriki was never used as a weapon. She had sealed the Kyuubi within herself as a means of robbing her husband's enemy of the Kyuubi's power. And also, the leather of Naruto's gloves creaked as he clenched his hands into fists. I would appreciate if you didn't speak about the Biju like they don't have souls. Akane was a Biju, but she wasn't a mindless beast that was all power and no intelligence. She had a soul. She had intelligence. She had her own goals and hopes and dreams, and he hated it when people talked as if she was just a weapon, as if she was a tool meant to be used by humans. It made all her talk of how humans were just greedy monkeys ring true. Are you standing up for the tailed beasts? Asked Chiho. I am. Akane, the Kyuubi, isn't just some mindless drone for us to use at our leisure. It was clear that none of them understood what he was talking about, except for Tenten. She was the only one among this group who he had told about Akane. Kakashi and Sakura were in the dark. Chiho was even more in the dark. Akane wasn't talking to him. She hadn't spoken to him in almost 2 years. However, Naruto still counted her as a friend, someone important to him. They might have gotten off to a rocky start. They might have even hated each other at first. However, after spending so much time with her, he had come to realize that their unfortunate situation, being stuck together, was not her fault. More than that, he had come to enjoy her stories and rely on her for advice. Well, he had before she had started ignoring all of his attempts to talk with her. I can't think about that right now. Naruto shook his head. He needed to focus on rescuing Gaara. That took precedence for the moment. He could think about his own personal problems after Gaara had been rescued. If he survived that long. XOX. There was no warning when it came, just several loud crashes as a number of trees were felled. Something was coming. Naruto, Kakashi, Sakura, Tenten, and Chiho had no time to look at the object coming toward them. All they could do was leap out of the way as something slammed into the tree they had been leaping off of. They each landed on another tree, sticking to the trunks with chakra. A massive cloud of dirt rose into the air. Splinters exploded everywhere. As the dust cleared, Naruto and the others looked at where the tree they had been standing on used to be. The tree was no longer there. Standing in its place was a person that Naruto recognized from several years ago. His blue skin seemed wet, almost slimy, as though he was covered in a layer of greasy liquid. Shark-like teeth were hidden behind pale blue lips that were currently peeled back in a grin filled with bloodlust. Dark cloak with red clouds. The symbol of Akatsuki. He was lugging a massive object over his shoulder, a long, oblong object wrapped in bandages, the long handle of which he gripped in a single hand. The man standing on the ground below them was massive. He was at least 2 heads taller than Kakashi, and maybe even taller than that. Naruto couldn't tell from this distance and angle. However, he remembered the last time he'd run into this man. Back then, the person before them, Kisame Hoshigake, had seemed like a monster, both in terms of size and appearance. Well, if it isn't the 9-tailed brat who gave me so much trouble 3 years ago, Kisame chuckled. I see you've grown a bit. I wonder if you've gotten any stronger. Tenten's eyes bulged as she stared at the person down below. That's Kisame Hoshigake, Kakashi finished when she trailed off as though choking down the words. It's been a while since I've seen your ugly mug, Naruto said. I'm surprised you're all alone. Aren't you and Itachi always together? Kisame chuckled again, the grin threatening to split his face somehow growing wider. Hey, unfortunately, Itachi is no longer with us. It's so sad. My beloved partner is gone. Naruto's hand twitched. However, that was the only sign he gave that showed his surprise. Itachi was dead. The idea was preposterous. Jiraiya had told him that out of all the Akatsuki he knew of, Itachi was hands down the most dangerous. His talent as a shinobi, the skill with which he wielded the Sharingan, and his experience made him one of the deadliest shinobi alive. There couldn't have been more than a handful of people who were able to take on Itachi and win. Oh, who did him in, if you don't mind my asking? Asked Naruto. Curious, are you? Kisame taunted. Naruto shrugged. I'm just wondering because Sasuke will be disappointed to know that his brother died before he could kill him. Sasuke, hey. Snickering some more, Kisame pulled the massive oblong object off his shoulder and slammed it into the ground. Samahata, the sentient sword that Kisame wielded. If you want to know who killed Itachi, then you're gonna have to defeat me and pry the information out. Kisame was clearly here to stall them. That much was obvious. He had shown up out of nowhere, told them that Itachi had been slain, and was refusing to tell them who had done it, then further taunted them by challenging them for the information. He was baiting them. This was merely an attempt to keep Naruto and the others from rescuing Gaara in time. I can't let him set the pace. Sakura, Tenten, Chiho, Naruto began, Kakashi and I will deal with Kisame. I want you three to head toward the coordinates and begin the rescue mission. We'll catch up once we finish with him. Sakura and Tenten looked like they wanted to complain. However, they were also experienced kunoichi, and they understood that Naruto was in charge of this mission. Even if they disagreed with his decision, they steeled themselves. Right, Sakura said. We'll begin rescuing Gaara. Hurry up and finish this guy so you can back us up. Otherwise we'll finish the mission without you. Be safe, Naruto, Tenten said. Chiho, Tenten, and Sakura leapt off in the direction they had been traveling. Kakashi had said that Pakun was near the Akatsuki's hideout, so he wasn't worried about them getting lost. Kisame was still standing down below. He didn't appear concerned about the kunoichi traveling away from him, which meant he probably didn't think two teenage girls and an old lady were a threat. Are you sure about this, Naruto? Asked Kakashi. I can't go all out if I'm worrying about Tenten and Sakura, and Chiho is too frail to fight this guy, Naruto said. In a battle with someone like Kisame, less is more. If you say so. Are you two done chatting? Asked Kisame as he raised Samahata above his head. Because if so, I'd like to get this battle started. I'm itching to see some blood. Kisame tossed Samahata into the air, high above the trees, and then clapped his hands together. Chakra so powerful that even Naruto could feel it amassed inside of him. Whatever he was doing, it was gonna be big. Get ready, Naruto, Kakashi said as he bent his knees. Naruto steadied his breathing and began circulating his chakra. He was gonna go full out right from the beginning. Don't worry, sensei. I was born ready. Sweeten. Bakusui Shoha. Water sprayed from Kisami's mouth, massive amounts of it, so much that it grew in height and size, expanding like the surging of an enormous tidal wave. Riding on top of this wave was Kisame, who continued pushing more water out of his mouth. Seeing this made Naruto wonder about how much chakra this guy had. It was no wonder people nicknamed him the Biju without a tail. Naruto flinched as water splashed against his face. The massive wave fell toward him and Kakashi, forcing them to jump before they were crushed by several hundred tons of liquid. Trees splintered as they were crushed. The water spread. More trees were hit, toppling over, unable to hold up under the intense pressure that slammed into them. Kisame rode the water and tilted his head, looking up at him and Kakashi as they landed on one of the larger trees, which had been able to withstand the impact due primarily to its size. This didn't mean much. Kisame grinned at them as the water he rode on crested and swelled, rising above even the tree Naruto and Kakashi stood on. Kakashi-sensei. I'm on it. Kakashi had already lifted his headband to unveil his Sharingan eye. He went through a series of hand seals, bent his knees, and pointed his left hand down, while he gripped his left forearm with his right hand for support. Reikiri. Lightning crackled from his palm, sparking and arcing out in tendrils that struck the tree, causing smoke and the scent of burnt wood to waft through the air. As the wave crashed down, Naruto threw himself away from the tree, while Kakashi leapt up toward Kisame. His Reikiri, the jutsu that was a level above Sasuke's Chidori, cut through Kisame like he was water. Which might have been because he actually was water. A water clone. Kakashi gawked. When did he? Kisame appeared behind Kakashi and swung Samahata. It was dodged, but it was a near thing from Naruto's perspective. Kakashi was nearly hit. The Kisame we were talking to was probably a clone this entire time. Kakashi would have seen him create a clone and replace himself otherwise. While Kakashi was obviously surprised, he didn't let Kisame know and responded to this new threat by leaping through the air and unleashing a Konoha Senpu, Meta-Guy's and Bushy Brow's signature attack. It was blocked by Samahata. However, the attack had enough power that Kisame was still launched off the water and flew through the air. Now's my chance. Naruto took a deep breath, released it, and then channeled his chakra. His body was enveloped by a dark purple aura as chakra exploded from his pores. He could feel his body changing. His body became thinner, more streamlined, but his muscles became denser, harder, and more powerful. The nails on his hands and feet sharpened into claws. He groaned as the whiskers on face became thicker, and his eyes went from blue to purple. All of Naruto's senses became sharper. It hurt. His eyes could pick out each individual leaf on the trees still standing, his nose could catch the smell of salt in the water Kisame had released, and his feet could feel the particles that had become stuck in his sandals. It was annoying. However, with this increase in senses, Naruto also received an intense boost in power. I can keep this up for a full 2 hours now, but I hope I won't need to use all that time. I want to save this for when we confront Gaara's kidnapper. Before Kisame had an inkling as to the danger he was in, Naruto launched himself at the shark-like man, who was even now fighting against Kakashi in a taijutsu battle. You're not nearly as good at taijutsu as that green idiot, Kisame said. Yes, well, my specialty is ninjutsu, Kakashi admitted with an eye smile. But I'm still good enough to battle against you. Hey, you've got a mouth on. Kisame said no more as Naruto slammed into him with a heel kick. The sound of his foot hitting Kisame's face was like a cannon blast. It echoed across the now destroyed forest as Kisame, his body twirling around, was sent rocketing off. This one isn't a clone. Naruto pushed himself harder, rocketing after Kisame as though he were flying. Wind chakra blasted from his feet and hands, propelling him forward, and he caught up quickly, appearing above Kisame as though by Hiraishin. Naruto Uzumaki Renden. Spinning around, Naruto drop-kicked Kisame in the gut. Blood spilled from the shark man's mouth. Further proof that this was Kisame. Not even a second later, Kisame abruptly changed direction, shifting from flying horizontally to vertically. He crashed into the water his own jutsu had created. A large splash blasted high into the air like a geyser. As he landed on the ground, Kakashi appearing seconds later, Naruto looked around to try and locate Kisame. He couldn't believe that an attack of this level had done the man in. He was probably hiding underneath the water, waiting for the perfect chance to ambush them. Can you locate him? Naruto asked. Kakashi shook his head. Although the Sharingan can see chakra to some degree, it's nowhere near as good as the Byakugan. What's more, all the chakra in this water would make it difficult for even a Byakugan to locate Kisame. Well, damn. At that moment, water exploded in front of them. Naruto snarled and slashed it apart with wind-infused claws. Kisame burst into water. Just a clone. Another one came out behind him. Naruto tore through that one, too. It was also a clone. Naruto grimaced as more water splashed him in the face, soaked his clothes, and made him shiver from the cold. To make matters worse, 3 more Kisames had appeared around him. All of them were probably also clones. The clones did not attack him right away, so Naruto looked to see how Kakashi was doing. Like him, his sensei was also fighting water clones. Kakashi tore through them like a scythe cutting through wheat. His Reikiri chirped as he used it like one might a sword, slicing apart everything in his path and using his Sharingan to avoid the water clone's attacks. He's not going to last long. Kakashi was an incredible ninja who had achieved mastery of the Sharingan despite not being an Uchiha, but that same mastery was also his biggest weakness. The Sharingan consumed a lot of chakra. Even though Kakashi was a Jonin with a large reserve of power, he didn't have Naruto's or Kisame's monstrous capacity. In a battle of attrition like this, Kakashi would run out of chakra long before Kisame. Which meant Naruto had to do something. Thinking fast, Naruto decided to just go for broke, and leapt high into the air. Kisami's water clones followed him, but Naruto sliced them apart with wind chakra. He soon reached a peak. Now so high above the forest that he could see dozens of kilometers out, Naruto began to fall. He oriented himself until he was falling head first. Then he channeled chakra into his hand. A Rasengan formed. It was purple. The Rasengan grew bigger. Seconds passed. The Rasengan continued to grow. It soon became the size of Naruto's head, and then the size of his body. Once it had gotten that large, Naruto exerted his control over it and, gritting his teeth as he struggled to bring the chakra under heel, he forced the Rasengan to compress until it was just a regular-sized sphere no larger than his fist. He held the Rasengan out in front of him. Then he slammed into the massive waves of water like a pantheon of angry gods. The water around him parted as he drilled a hole straight through, going all the way to the bottom, where he released all of the chakra built up in his Rasengan. Purple chakra exploded outward like a shockwave. With Naruto in the center of it, a large ripple tore through the water, wreaking havoc and causing the water to get blasted every which way. Cracks also appeared in the ground. They were large and gaping, chasms that easily spanned at least a meter in width and several more meters deep. Naruto, in the center of the chaos he'd unleashed, was completely unaffected. He waited until the storm from his attack had settled down, and then he stood up. He looked around. Naruto was standing within a crater. It was quite large, at least 10 meters across and several deep. The forest and water that had been present was gone. There was no sign of Kisame. There was also no sign of Kakashi. Please warn me the next time you do something like that. Wait, never mind. Kakashi was climbing out of the ground several meters away, his silver hair now covered in brown mud. His clothing was a bit torn, but he didn't look harmed. He stood up and walked over to Naruto, whistling. You've done quite a lot of damage, Kakashi said. I had no idea you had this kind of destructive power. Releasing his hybrid mode, Naruto allowed his body to return to normal. My hybrid mode grants me incredible destructive powers at the cost of consuming chakra a lot more quickly. My control over it has gotten to the point where I can last for around 2 hours, but I can't fire off techniques like this one willy-nilly. I can see why, Kakashi murmured. Do you think that got him? Kakashi sighed as he pulled his headband back down. I don't know, but I'd guess so. Guess again, a voice said from beneath them. Naruto and Kakashi looked down just as water gushed forth. Even though they were surprised, both of them were experienced enough to jump out of the way, or try to. They were too late. The water had latched onto their legs. Not only did it keep them from running, but it quickly expanded to cover their entire bodies, leaving them trapped. This is the Suiro no Jutsu complete. Kisame Hoshigake grinned as he emerged from the ground several meters from their position. As he did, a pair of water clones appeared from underneath the ground as well. Naruto realized that Kisame must have used his massive attack as a means of cover, hid himself underground, and then waited until they had let their guard down before attacking. I have to admit, you two have given me a lot more trouble than I thought you would, Kisame said. I see now why the zombie brothers lost to you, nine-tailed brat. However, you shouldn't assume that everyone in Akatsuki are in the same league. Those two are nowhere near as powerful as I am. So I see, Kakashi said from behind Kisame. Naruto blinked when the Kakashi inside of the water prison disappeared. Meanwhile, the Kakashi behind Kisame attacked with a kunai. It was blocked when Kisame shifted Samahata on his back, but Kakashi merely leapt back. Naruto used that moment to escape. He exploded with chakra, entered his hybrid mode again, and tore apart the water prison with ease. As he landed on the ground, Naruto stared at Kisame, now pinned between him and Kakashi, and tried to figure out how the man had escaped the explosion from his technique. He must have replaced himself with a water clone just after I released my technique. He could have easily hid himself underground before my Rasengan hit the ground, and then he attacked the moment Kakashi and I dropped our guard. Except Kakashi hadn't dropped his guard. It was clear that Kakashi had seen what Kisame had done, replaced himself with a clone, and then waited for Kisame to reveal himself. No wonder he was an S-rank ninja in the bingo book. As Naruto concluded his theory, Kakashi rushed Kisame and engaged the man in taijutsu. Kisame mostly relied on using his sword to block Kakashi's kunai. Naruto was impressed by the speed at which Kisame swung Samahata, which had to weigh at least as much as Naruto did. Even so, he whirled it around like it weighed less than a feather. Kakashi blocked one of Kisame's attacks, using his kunai to bring Samahata into the ground, and then he kicked Kisame in the face. As the shark man stumbled back, Kakashi grabbed Samahata's handle to take it away from Kisame. HNNKKK. Naruto jerked his head back as Kakashi bit back a surprised scream. The Jonin's hand was bleeding from what looked like teeth marks. Naruto looked back at the sword. Jutting from Samahata's handle were numerous sharp spikes that reminded him of fins, or maybe shark's teeth. They were covered in glistening crimson blood. Kakashi! Naruto shouted. Look out, Naruto! Naruto leapt back as a water clone of Kisame attacked him. He slashed out with his hand and unleashed 4 wind blades that severed the clone into 5 pieces before it splashed into water. The real Kisame, or what Naruto assumed was the real Kisame, had grabbed Samahata once more. Naruto rushed toward him. A Rasengan appeared in his hand, which he thrust out. Kisame raised Samahata. Naruto's Rasengan slammed into the giant sword, but instead of grinding it apart like what would have happened if Kisame was using a regular sword, this one caused the Rasengan to dissipate. Naruto felt his chakra being drained and jumped back. I had forgotten that your sword can absorb chakra, Naruto said with a grimace. Well, now you remember. Kisame grinned. Not that it'll do you any good. Naruto knew they were in a bind. He'd been careful about not letting Kisame use Samahata to absorb his chakra. There was no telling what would happen if Samahata got a hold of his chakra in hybrid mode, which was exceptionally powerful. That would be a bad combination. You got a plan, Kakashi? Naruto asked the man standing on his left. I do, Kakashi admitted. I was hoping not to use this unless I really had to, but, well, it looks like I really have to. Just hold him off for at least 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Got it. Naruto rushed forward, slashing his hands and unleashing several blades of wind that Kisame blocked with Samahata. The sword gobbled his chakra up like it was a delicacy. Naruto narrowed his eyes, but he didn't stop his charge and soon slammed into Kisame with a heel kick. It was blocked by a sword. Naruto bit back a scream as jagged teeth tore through the bandages wrapped around the sword. Pain flared in his foot as he hopped back. He couldn't withhold his grimace, but he wasn't given time to recover as Kisame swung at him. The massive sword dug into the ground as Kisame slammed Samahata into the earth. Fuden, Tatsumaki Senpu. Naruto punched the air in front of him, which exploded as a tornado emerged from his fist. It was blocked. Of course it was. Samahata could absorb chakra. However, the purpose of this was to distract Kisame so Kakashi could do whatever he needed to. Udoma Rasengan. Creating another Rasengan, Naruto pumped more chakra into it, causing it to expand, and then he thrust it at Kisame, who raised Samahata. The Rasengan blasted against Samahata, which tried to absorb his chakra. However, Naruto refused to be beaten, and he pumped more and more chakra into his Rasengan, trying to overpower the Samahata with sheer grit. Brat, do you really think you can overpower me like this? Kisame asked. I won't know unless I try, Naruto grunted as he fed the Rasengan even more chakra. I'm confident in my chakra capacity. Ha! It's your funeral. As Naruto continued pushing against Kisame's blade, Samahata, Kakashi suddenly shouted, "Move, Naruto." Naruto did move. He leapt back just as Kakashi's Sharingan eye suddenly changed. Naruto didn't see much because something else caught his attention, but Kakashi's eye had definitely changed shape. Kisame screamed as something black appeared around him. His eyes widened as he tried to leap back, but he was too late. Dark red blood flew everywhere as Kisame was torn in two, the two halves flying off in separate directions before hitting the ground with a meaty thud. Sweat had formed on Naruto's brow, but he wiped it away as his tense muscles relaxed. It looked like the battle was over. Not even someone like Kisame could survive something like that. What the heck? Naruto walked up to Kisame's corpse, or what should have been Kisame's corpse. What had once been Kisame was now someone else. The man now lying on the ground in two halves was shorter than Kisame by at least half a meter. Black hair hung limply from his head, the left bangs longer than the right. He had a goatee, and his dark eyes stared listlessly at the sky. Kakashi. Yeah, that's not Kisame, Kakashi said, pulling his headband over his Sharingan. I don't know who that is, but they are clearly someone else. Judging from their clothes, not only is this person a shinobi from Suna, but they're an important member. That robe is only worn by members of Suna's council. I remember hearing something about how one of their members went missing. Think this is him. It's certainly possible. I would even say it's highly probable. Kakashi looked at the decimated carcass and sighed. However, this only gives me more questions. What was this person doing with the Akutsuki, why was he fighting us, and why did he look like Kisame? Probably some jutsu, Naruto said. Whatever questions we may have won't be answered by just standing around. Naruto came to a decision. Let's seal this guy inside of a scroll. We can have Baki identify him later. Right now rescuing Gaara is our top priority. You're right. Kakashi agreed. Good judgment call, Naruto. Thanks. Naruto pulled out a scroll, knelt down, had Kakashi place the two corpse halves on the scroll, and then made a hand seal. There was a burst of smoke. When the smoke cleared, the carcass was gone, and kanji was now written all over the seals. Sighing, he rolled the scroll up, stood to his feet, then put the scroll in his pouch. Let's go, he said. I'm right behind you, Kakashi said. As they took off, Naruto wondered if Tenten, Sakura, and Chiho had arrived at Akatsuki's hideout yet. He hoped nothing had happened to them. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next part.